Hello, everybody. Welcome. Uh-oh, echo. Let's get rid of that. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining for a dev stream for our anniversary. Thank you so much for being here. Really pleased to have you all with us today on Twitch, and I'm really excited to get into a bunch of stuff related to Foundry VTT, things that we're doing on the team, things we've accomplished, things we're up to, things we're looking ahead towards in the future. It is going to be a great time. So yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for that. And I'm excited to spend the next couple hours, at least, I don't know exactly how long, with you all and going through everything that we're up to, doing a couple giveaways, answering lots of questions in chat, talking about version 13, speculating about version 14, whatever y'all want to get into. This is going to be a little bit freeform. I have some things I think would be good to get to, but ultimately we can kind of go in whatever direction the chat is interested in going. If it turns into more Q&A or if it turns into more presentation of features, we can do all kinds of things. So anyways, the plan for today is we're gonna talk about our anniversary celebration. We're gonna talk about the Patreon poll for version 14 that has just started yesterday. We're going to go through some of the really big highlight features of version 13 that is now stable. We'll do some giveaways, we'll do some Q&A. It's going to be a fun time. And yeah, excited to spend the next while with you all in chat. Throughout the stream, if you want to ask a question, it is going to be kind of pretty free form, so I'll try and answer as many as I can as we go. So if you want to drop questions in chat by putting a all caps question : or something in front of your question, that makes it easier for me to, out of my peripheral vision, pick it up, and I'll try and cover questions as we go. And I guess to kick things off, I can answer Chaos OS. First question: what's your perfect Sunday? Oh goodness, it's probably sleeping in a little bit, maybe some pancakes, a morning Arsenal game, but maybe not too early a kickoff. Then maybe some quiet time in the afternoon to pursue a personal project that I don't ever get time to do during the week. Time with the family, kids later in the afternoon. I don't know. I'm kind of a homebody, so probably nothing too adventurous. But yeah, that sounds pretty great to me. Anyways, one other question before I jump into anniversary stuff. What's the average time between releases? How long do you think V14 will take? Yeah, cutting right to the heavy-hitting questions. Average time, probably 9 months. Sometimes sooner, sometimes slower. Erring on the side of slower these days. I think our releases have slowed down a bit. I'm guessing V14 will be early next year. It's my best guess. We'll see. All right, anyways, plan for today is I'm going to start by talking about the anniversary celebration. Holy crap. 5 years, really? I can't tell you whether it feels more like it's been 2 or 20. But evidently the answer is it's been 5. That's amazing. I really it's so surreal to have been doing this as my entire thing for 5 years. I really can't quite wrap my head around it. And the team that's grown. I mean, we have such a wonderful team now. For those that y'all that don't know, the core Foundry VTT team is 9 people. There's five of us that are developers, and then 4 of us that kind of assist in various ways, extending on that. So we're not a huge team, but it's so amazing having all these people working to build, Foundry alongside me and working together. I can't believe it's can't really quite believe it, but yeah, it's amazing stuff. My hair was way longer back then. It was pretty long. Couple of weeks ago, it got too long for my comfort. Goes in ebbs and flows. Yeah, so anniversary celebration 2025. It kicked off 2 days ago, and we are now on Friday, the day 3. So the sale is ongoing throughout the duration. So we can talk about that first. Foundry VTT licenses are 20% off, and a huge amount of premium content in our official marketplace is also 20% off. For those of you who may not have been around so much like this year yet, a huge thing for us earlier in the year is the launch of the official marketplace. There's so much great content on it, and it's a really awesome sort of one-stop shopping experience for for getting amazing content for Foundry, and so much of it is on sale right now. So it's a pretty sweet opportunity to like stock up on some gaming goodness to last you the next year. So the sale on our license keys, the sale on premium content, and then also some of our publisher partners are also doing sales at the same time. So Cubicle 7 for Warhammer Fantasy and some 40k stuff, Imperium Maledictum, Soulbound, and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Oh, also Wrath and Glory. All of those systems, all of their content for Foundry, a lot of it is also 20% off from the Cubicle 7 website. And Hod Studio is also they're one of our newer publishers, but they've been around for a little while now. They're also doing a sale, 20 to 30% off select products for Foundry VTT. So those are all linked in the anniversary celebration page notes. So definitely look for something that you like, and also consider that if you have any friends that are kind of on the fence about, we've been thinking about switching to Foundry or kind of wish I had it, it makes a great gift, especially when it's on sale. So it's easy to gift software licenses if you want to pick up a Foundry license for a friend. It's a noble thing that you can do to spread the good word. All right, let's see. Let's see. A question from Muttley. You guys are generally considered the top VTT available. After only 5 years, how does that make you all feel about achieving such recognition? I mean, I do think some people feel that way, and it makes me feel really freaking good. I think it's super gratifying to be at the top of the list for a lot of people. It doesn't have to be everybody. It's fine that there's people that like other platforms better, and we can be frank and acknowledge that there's things that other platforms do, that certain things they do better than Foundry. But I think it's so huge and so amazing that Foundry VTT is like the go-to platform for playing TTRPGs online for so many people. Like, that is wild. I really thought it was going to be like something that I would like start making for my own group, and I would like inflict it on them, and they would, because they're my friends, like they would say nice things and be like, "Oh, good job, Andrew. Yeah, you write that code and you make that thing that." But I didn't really expect too much more than like patronizing murmurs of approval for what I was doing. And then here we are 5 years later, and it's very real and very serious, and it's amazing. There's a lot of responsibility, I guess I feel, because of that. It has changed the way that it's changed my life for sure, and I think it's fair to say that it's changed the lives of some of the team members too, who are able to do what they love professionally and have that happiness. So it's pretty great. Not to be too self-congratulatory, but I guess if there is any moment that you can congratulate yourself, then perhaps a 5-year anniversary of something successful is that moment. I see that Jarvis Gang is asking about the V14 Patreon vote. I'll skip that question, Jarvis, and I'll try and come back to it when we talk about V14 and the vote. So I'll come back to that, or you can ask it again in a moment. Anyways, in terms of other things related to the anniversary celebration, I do want to run through the schedule of everything that we're doing. Just while I have you all here captive, I'll use this moment to let you all know what's going on. So the feature vote is out starting yesterday. We'll talk about that in a minute. Right now is this stream that is happening here. Tomorrow, we are at PaizoCon, which is going on throughout the weekend. Our great friends at Paizo are also celebrating, and PaizoCon is a great moment for us to unite forces in joint celebration. So there's a panel tomorrow at PaizoCon, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, with folks from our team, particularly those who work on Foundry VTT premium content and community developers of the Pathfinder 2e system, also community developers of the Starfinder 2e system, which is getting underway, and I think there's going to be some talk about what that process to support Starfinder will entail as well. So for those of you who are enthusiastic Paizo supporters, or just folks that have always been interested about Pathfinder but maybe not quite made the leap yet, the panel tomorrow would be a great one to check out. There's going to be some giveaways there as well, maybe. I don't want to promise. I think possibly. Yeah, and then on Sunday, Kaora will be live on stream. Actually, we need to update this description because it's not... I don't think it's going to be me. I wasn't planning on it being me. I think it's just Kaora. I think Kaora is going to settle in and do some fantastic Ember region map creation and talk about Ember's wonderful lore and the development of Ember's lore. And so yeah, I think it's just going to be Kaora on Sunday, but I'll have to check. I don't know. Maybe I'm expected. I don't think so though. I think it's just Kaora on Sunday, and yeah, it's going to be an amazing stream. You're going to see a hyper talented artist in action, somehow miraculously multitasking to make beautiful things while also engaging stream chat at the same time. So for those of you who don't know, KR is the art director with our team, and most specifically the art director for Ember itself, and not just art direction, but sort of lore keeping as well. So KR is the expert on all things visual and narrative. So that's going to be an amazing stream. I plan to tune in myself if I'm not on it, which I don't think I am, because I am doing an Ember stream the weekend following. So we'll get to that in a moment. On Monday, we'll have a article posted on the website, our annual year in review article, which is sort of like a long form introspection of what we're up to and what we've accomplished. There's links in our anniversary page to prior editions if you are curious to gaze back in time and see what it was that we thought about when we were 1 year old. Let's go back to the 1 year anniversary edition. What were we talking about? We were talking about V2 lighting engine and adding active effects, and oh look, there's a thing called documents now. Amazing that wasn't always the case. Yeah, we've grown a long way. Yeah, it's amazing to think about like how things have changed since this first anniversary update. So it's fun to kind of cast our gaze back in time. We done all growed up. Then on Tuesday, the 27th, we have a fun, just kind of goofy, fun-loving stream here on Twitch for Tomb of Annihilation that isn't the full adventure. We're going to be jumping in medias res into the heart of the action, and we're going to be jumping into a brutal dungeon gauntlet with some folks from the team. I'll be DMing, they'll be dying, and we're gonna run through the part of the adventure, and I'm just gonna be brutally punishing as the DM, and it's gonna be goofy and silly, and they're going to all perish in probably spectacular or embarrassing ways. So yeah, it's going to hurt, and that's kind of the point. It's going to be fun. We'll just have fun jumping into something that everyone is woefully unprepared for. And who knows, maybe they'll survive and I'll have to admit defeat. All right, then on Wednesday of next week, a question from Kalad, TOA release when? I don't know what you're talking about, Kalad. I have no idea about anything related to any of that. Next week on Wednesday, we're doing an AMA on, or AUA, I guess, on Reddit. So for those of you who are participants in our amazing community subreddit, /r/FoundryVTT, the team will be there answering your questions all day, not just me, but a bunch of us from the team will be on Reddit taking any of your questions that you want to learn more about and talking through them. Let's see. Then Friday of next week is going to be really fun. Another live stream, Free Project Friday live. So for those of you who are familiar with the term FPF or Free Project Friday, it's a monthly tradition that we have on the team where every month, the last Friday of the month or close to it, plus or minus a week, we take a day where the team is liberated of our typical prioritization and obligations, and it's a chance for us to be inspired or go nuts or try creating something unexpected that hasn't been otherwise prioritized. So Free Project Friday is a chance for all of us to work on a passion project or something that we are really excited about or a cool idea we have. And historically, some really fun and really interesting, neat features come out of that event. And we usually do it like behind closed doors because it's kind of a, safe space for the team to be able to not be embarrassed at doing something half-baked and showing off an incomplete feature. But this year, once a year, I guess we maybe do a live one where we do it publicly. So this next Friday, we'll be doing that. And the team will be all together and we'll be showing off the fun things that we have made for that event. And then lastly, next Saturday, you do get an Ember stream with me to close out the week. I'll be doing a dedicated deep dive into Ember, all of the new stuff that we've added over the last few months, new stuff that's coming soon that will be dropping about the same time that this stream is happening, a big new update, progress on Crucible, Ordain as a Metropolis, gameplay in Ordain, and progress that the team is making creating Ember. So next Saturday, that will be the focus. We got a really ambitious slate of events happening, and so I really hope for those of you who are excited by the occasion to join us for as many of those as you can. I think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff, a lot of interesting things to learn, a lot of good insights from the team. Great chance to engage with us and to let us engage with you in return. Okay, let me pause a moment and take any questions that were in chat. Aitan asks about our roadmap objectives for V14. That's a good segue into where I'm thinking I'm going to go next. So hold that thought for a moment and I will answer it. Let's see what else. Almost 100K members on the Discord. Yeah, holy shit. The Discord is big. That is genuinely crazy. Let's see, what else do we got? Okay, I think I'm good. A question from Sergorak. What other official D&D products besides TOA are planned for Foundry VTT? Good question. You may be familiar with some of the announced Wizards of the Coast roadmap of things that's coming in the future. We know that there's Dragon Delves coming. We know that there's the Eberron Forge of the Artificer book. Safe to bet that at least one of those two books will be on Foundry VTT, if not both of them. I don't think we're ready to make an announcement on exactly which ones at which times. But yes, those upcoming Wizards products are going to have Foundry support. So that's our goal. So keep an ear out for announcements towards that effect. And yeah, stay tuned for the TOA stream on the 27th. Question from Adrian Parsons. How far in advance do you choose the arbitrary, non-community voted major feature? Well, it's definitely not arbitrary, but I know what you mean. Do you already know which one you want for V15? Do you just do a vibes check when it's nearly time to choose? Yeah, let's move on to like that part of the conversation, because I do think there's a bunch of great questions y'all have about V14 and our future plans. So I think like that's a really good place to go next. So the thing we posted yesterday was the V14 Patreon feature vote. And the feature vote is on the website, although to actually vote in it, you have to be a Patreon supporter. But the feature vote, the article, I can pull it up here. Let's see. That is not the correct URL. Let's see. V14 Patreon vote. Nath, if you're watching, you can go into our Anniversary 2025 article and you can fix the link for me under the V14 Patreon feature vote. It's got the wrong article slug on there. All right. Yeah, so the V14 feature vote, every time we start work on a new major version, we think about it from a couple of angles. We think about what are the major infrastructural investments that we feel that we need to make as a team in order for Foundry to be the best product it can be or best positioned for the future. We also think about like what user-facing feature or features is like a headliner that we want to focus on that we feel adds significant value to the way that Foundry VTT works. But the third pillar of what we prioritize as like our major epics for a major version is something that our most dedicated community members are excited for us to do. And so that's where the Patreon vote comes in, is like we want to collect input from our most devoted, our most dedicated users about what would make Foundry even better for them. And like why that population? Why is that the group of people that we're wanting their opinion? Well, it's the group that we feel most thankful towards, and we want to show our appreciation and our acknowledgement and our mutual support of what folks want us to do. So, this isn't the way that we think about figuring out like, oh, what does Foundry VTT need in order to be like better for new users, or what does Foundry need to do in order to be like better for performance? Like those aren't the kinds of things that we're making people vote on, but yeah, we do choose a major feature from the Patreon poll. And so you can read on the article what a bunch of the options are, but we also deepest pockets. Yeah, all $3 of deep pockets, Ricky. Yeah, you got to shell out that $350 to make your voice heard for sure. But yeah, in terms of like V14 planned features, we have already thought about a few things that we think are really important to do in version 14. So these are ones that like for various reasons we think are like pretty essential. The first one is one that I am deeply personally excited about, scene levels. I shared a little bit of an anecdote on the article about this in terms of back in 2018 when I was very first starting development of Foundry overall. I had like this kind of whiteboard. I had this list of things that, like, in my vision, my mental model for like what a VTT might be. It's like, here's all the things that I would expect it to do. And I wasn't calling it scene levels at the time, but I was calling it like something like multiple floors or something like that. And the idea of it was the same essential ingredient, which is like in this kind of 2D top-down ecosystem, which we so conventionally use for tabletop gaming, you know, what can you do to add more excitement to gameplay or tactical nuance to the scene? Well, you try and bring in verticality as best you can, and in a top-down world, that verticality kind of automatically means that you're restricting your visibility of the scene in exchange for more tactical flexibility about vertical movement. And so, like, the question is, like, how can we have the best of both worlds? How can we make it to where tokens can move up and down and see different things, have different floors of a building, or, you know, going underwater or climbing up and down out of a pit or whatever? Like, how do we support those things in a way that is really intuitive for gameplay and creates more rich gameplay spaces that can include three-dimensional mechanics, despite the fact that Foundry VTT is fundamentally a 2D VTT, and we're committed to remaining a 2D VTT. We don't have any plans to like redo Foundry in a 3D engine or anything like that. So I mean, I would say for the foreseeable future, which is quite a long time. So, like, we are committed to being, you know, to the 2D gameplay experience. And so the question is, like, how can we make that 2D gameplay experience as exciting and as powerful as possible when elevation comes into the picture? And there's certain things that, like, Foundry would or will need to do if we're going to be successful in doing that. And so scene levels is kind of like a combination of features that would be necessary in order to have meaningful elevation change within the software. And obviously there's modules, really good community developed module solutions that do this in various ways. We're not just going to be implementing a module in core. That's not the way we approach this. We are going to be thinking about you know, how do we want to do it in, like, what is the technical foundation that we want, given all of the range of tools that we have available, you know, at our disposal for working on this. And, you know, I think it's fair to say that, like, scene levels is kind of like scene regions in a way that, like, it kind of raises the ceiling more than it raises the floor. And that means it's going to be of limited use to some people. And I think we know that. Like, I think we know that not everyone is going to use levels. We know that not everyone is going to use regions. We know, but by having tools like scene regions and by having tools like scene levels and having you know, these advanced storytelling tools, we can create amazing content experiences for people in Foundry, and that would be impossible otherwise. So, you know, even though this is the type of feature that might not play into everybody's day-to-day use case, it is the kind of thing that when people experience it, whether it's they took the time to set it up themselves or they purchased a premium content module that's using this, they're going to be blown away, and they're going to say, like, this is so good, this is so cool. And that kind of, like, memorable kind of pinnacle moment is the kind of thing that we definitely want to empower, even though it means that we're not necessarily reaching everybody with this feature. Let me pause for a moment and see if there's any questions I want to snag. Sergerath asks, what will scene levels do that levels and wall height currently do not? Well, it's not exactly the right way to frame the question. I think it's going to do some things in common with those modules. It's going to do some things those modules don't do. And it's probably not going to do some things that those modules do. Because, you know, our goal is not to 100% absorb their features or emulate all of their features. So it's not quite so straightforward as just like, how do we make sure that, what is the addition on top of those modules? But there are going to be some differences. I think in particular, thinking about fog of war exploration is really important for us. We know that the upstairs of a building doesn't have the same floor plan as the downstairs of the building, and just because you've gone in the downstairs doesn't mean you've explored the upstairs. And so, that's something that's really important. Making sure that three-dimensionality of our placed objects in canvas space all at least optionally can support heights. So like, what's a token height? What's a measured template height? What's a wall height? This isn't going to be required. Like, we don't want to create an onerous burden for users to have to like configure a bunch of extra data. But in cases where you need it, you need to be able to define those things. And so those are things that are going to need to be possible, but then also easily navigating the scene. So what happens when the scene is more complex and there's more going on and there's things underneath other things? How do we make it easy to understand what the layout of the level is? That's also got to happen. So, we're going to take a high level, big picture view at like what is needed overall for this to be a good experience. It's going to be some of the things that modules do. It's going to be some things modules don't, and it's going to not be some things that modules do. So, it's going to be a mixed bag, but hopefully I can encourage that the way that we're approaching the conversation and the way that we're going to approach the design process is trying to think like, if all you have is Core Foundry, what are the tools that you need in order to have a good sort of 3D multi-level experience? All right, cool. I probably missed a bunch of questions. If I missed your question, I'm sorry about that. Please feel free to re-ask it. Question from Chaos, how do you approach a complex sprawling feature like scene levels? Do you have signposts? How do you approach, depending on whether you mean like from a development perspective, like how do you begin planning it or something else? A little hard, maybe different answers in different situations, but I think from a development perspective, it's about breaking the problem down to the most fundamental building blocks, ideally ones that can be independently or separately or incrementally worked on, because we don't want to take something and say like, oh my gosh, it's so big, it's unapproachable. How do we even start working on this? We've got to break it apart into some, abstractions or some component parts that we can, tackle one at a time. Okay, cool. Going back to the Patreon poll and the things that we're definitely already planning to do in V14, Promir improvements. So there's a little bit of backstory here. We switched to Promir in V10, and so Promir has been around for quite a long time now. And a reminder for those of you who might not be like, what's Promir again? It's the editor. It's the rich text editor that is used to edit journals or actor biographies or item descriptions or anything else. So we switched from TinyMCE to Promir, and I think Promir is great. I'm a big fan, but it is fair to say that Promir lacks some formatting or font choice or font sizing or color, features, some various like quality of life features Promir lacks that the previous editor that we used, TinyMCE, had. And so at least until now, it's been possible to say, like, when you create a journal page, you can create a text page that uses the TinyMCE sheet instead of the Promir sheet, and you could still have access to that other editor. Access to that other editor, though, is going to go away in V14, mostly for licensing reasons. And because it's going away in V14, we don't want to, make people feel like it's a big step backwards that like now I can't even use TinyMCE anymore. So we're going to be prioritizing a suite of text editor improvements that should help improve Promir across the board and make it better for everybody. All right. Then the next thing that we are definitely doing in V14 is something that I've kind of called improved scene management. I think for a complex scene, and like this one, Demon Queen Awakens, this level like isn't even really all that complex. Like it's a big map, it has lots of walls, it has lots of lights, but it's not even really that complex. There's scenes out there that are like staggeringly even more complex than this one. And especially when you introduce things like scene regions or multi-level, the amount of stuff in a scene can be a lot. And so you need to be able to quickly find like, oh, where's a certain tile on a certain level of the scene? And so like navigating the canvas is something that like currently you kind of have to know what you're looking for. Like I have to know, because I built this map, I know there's a tile here, and so I can go do what I need to, or I know there's a tile here, but I don't see anywhere a list of those, and I can't quickly like pan to where they are or know exactly what I'm working with if I didn't memorize the scene by virtue of constructing it in the first place. And so a lot of this like improved scene management is going to be about how do we make it easier to find things in the scene? How do we make it easier to manage them if they need to update them or delete them or move them around? And so better UI UX experience is going to be necessary. As our scenes get progressively more complex, we need progressively more powerful tools to work with them. And so that's something that we're going to be doing alongside scene levels, so that we don't add a feature in scene levels that is like really impossible to use. I mean, we're probably not going to nail it first try. I imagine that our first pass at scene levels is going to have some rough edges that are probably a little bit hard to work with, but we're going to really do our best alongside developing the underlying tech for scene levels to develop the corresponding UX that makes it possible to design these sophisticated big scenes. All right, so that's a kind of an overview of things that we're committed to doing, planning to do in V14, regardless of which thing wins the Patreon feature vote. We can talk a little bit about like what's actually on the poll as options for people to choose between. Let me grab a couple of quick questions first before I do that, though. Dregory Term asks, between Core Foundry, Development, Ember, Crucible, how do you find time for personal stuff? I need your time management skills. Well, I think I do work a lot, so it is fair to say that like my work-life harmony is, I work a lot, but I also work from home, and so like, I've had prior jobs where I spent over an hour in the car each day, and I don't do that. I walk into my office and shut the door and sit down and work, and then I stand up and walk out of my office whenever I want. And, my family's here, my kids are here, they're outside, playing right outside in the living room or right outside by the swing set. And so, I think I get a lot personally. I get a lot of like life harmony by just not having a clean break between work life and home life. It all kind of blends together a bit, and maybe that's healthy, maybe that's not, but I do get a lot of great family time. I have a lot of things outside of work that I do. And so, yeah, I manage it. But I could always use more time, to be honest. I mean, projects like Crucible in particular, I wish if I had an extra day each week where I could work on Crucible, it would be an amazing game system. But it's held back to a certain extent by the fact that I don't. And that's something I have to kind of grapple with, and it's always a renegotiation of priorities. Like, when can I get more time? How can I get more time? Where does that come from? Yeah, it's tricky. I don't know. Just a little personal insight, I suppose. Loveless Lucidity, are there plans to offer guidance and training how to get the most out of Foundry? Deep dive classes, perhaps, on how to use the tools in creative ways. A lot of those new features are quite complex. Yes, you are highlighting a key challenge for us that we are not satisfied with where we are right now. So improving the learning process for new users, improving the the process by which people can gain familiarity with how Foundry works, and refer back to reference material, whether it's technical for developers or, more importantly, non-technical for non-developers. That's something that we are working on. I had a productive kickoff meeting, in fact, the other day with Dan on the team, who's starting work on a new generation of knowledge base tutorial material. Now that I've said it out loud, Dan, you're committed. You've got to deliver. So there you go. It's a thing now. Yeah, you know, we're working on thinking very seriously about how we can do a better job there. MIJ Mike asks, in some published adventures like Kingmaker, there are links to scenes, but those links don't go anywhere or do anything because you can't link to scenes. Is there any likelihood in the future that text editor improvements could achieve this? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been frustrating for people that, okay, let me create a test journal entry. In fact, I'll switch it to the new V2 journal sheet so that we can see a little bit of that, although I am in the 5e system, so it's wanting to apply some styles to it that maybe it shouldn't. But yeah, so suppose like embedded stuff. Suppose we create a page for embedded things. One of the new things in V13 that I'm really excited about is more meaningful embeddings. So for example, one of the first things that's possible to do now that wasn't possible before, like a great use of embedding, is roll tables. So previously, you know what, I better change the sheet back because I think this interaction between Demon Queen and the default 5e sheet and me trying to demo this is probably not productive. Okay, there you go. Now more readable. So before, when you like link to a roll table, you just get a link, and that's good enough. Like you can pull up the table and you can use it. Here's a look at our new, more beautiful V13 roll table presentation, by the way. It looks much nicer. But, you know, what if you want to actually use that roll table in text content? So we now have, instead of just linking to the content, we can embed the content. And when we embed the content, we get the full table here in the journal, and we can, you know, I can even make it like rollable. I can make it to where I can, you know, roll off of this roll table directly out of the journal, and, you know, it tracks which results I've pulled. And that's like just way better as a interactive experience with the journal system. Now, some systems, now any document type can be embedded. So for example, you could take an actor and you could do an actor embed, and that actor embed will, if the system has implemented support for it, have a meaningful embedding for what that actor is or does. And if I switch over to an Ember world a little later today, I can show some of the Ember specific embeddings that we've done that are really interesting. Now, all of this to say, like, it's been frustrating to people in the past that when you link to a scene, what you get is a link to the scene's sheet. And I understand that frustration because ultimately, like, a link to the scene's sheet, like this one right here, is not really that useful. But I've been very insistent that we toe that line and we preserve that behavior because I don't want the inconsistency of sometimes a UUID link does something and sometimes it does something else. When you link to a document by UUID, it always links to the sheet for that document. Now, that might be useful, it might not be useful, but it is consistent, and that is really important to me. So how do we finally break through this impasse where, practically speaking, someone wants like a meaningful scene link, but I want UUID links to all behave the same way? Well, I think the obvious answer is that we need a scene embedding. And so we need to develop an embed for scenes that when you embed the scene in the journal entry, you get some sort of meaningful behavior. Now here you see we don't yet. There's no meaningful behavior here yet. But if we develop that, then we'll have a way to put a scene embedded in text where you can do useful things with it, like view it, activate it, pull your players to it, preview it, preload it, whatever it is you need to do with the scene, you'd be able to do it here using the embed representation. So that's the path forward, and that's definitely part of the vision for better and more Promir stuff, is more embeddings for more document types, more meaningful embeddings, like can we embed a combat encounter, or can we embed a card deck, or can we embed a macro? Like, what does it mean to embed a macro? Can we embed a playlist or a playlist sound? All of these types of documents could have really useful and really meaningful embedding behaviors, and so that's definitely something that we are keen to do. Very long-winded answer. You probably were like, yes, Andrew, I get it. You probably got there about 10 minutes ago, but I just kept talking, so there you have it. All right, let's see. Question from Tabby. Will V14 have any of the really awesome hex grid detail systems from Ember or Kingmaker? Unsure. We've been doing those on a product by product basis, because each hex exploration product has a little bit of its own special rules necessary, and so we haven't added a underlying core feature yet, but we might. Obviously, Tomb of Annihilation, which may or may not be a product that may or may not be happening, is also another one that has a lot of hex-based gameplay to it. Question from Jutru. Is there going to be Foundry giveaways? Yes, there will be giveaways. Stick around. All right, so let's talk about the features that are on the poll. And keep the questions coming. I'm happy to answer more things that y'all are curious about. Advanced measured templates. So advanced measured templates would be an improvement to our existing measured templates system, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The measured templates are good. They can do a lot of things. They're very easy to use. They're very helpful, but they don't have a lot of capacity for automation. You can place them, but it's kind of tricky to get the template to then do something, be mechanically meaningful. There's modules out there that do a better job with this or add features, but we want core measured templates to be up-leveled and to be more powerful. So we want them to be visually beautiful. We want them to be mechanically impactful, so that when there's an area of effect, like a big, cone of cold or something, that the creatures in that area of effect can be automatically prompted to make saving throws or to have active effects triggered on them or incur damage. We want the templates to be powerful in the way that they interact with persistent effects or auras. So if there's a character that has like an aura around it that moves as the token moves, that's something we need our template system to support. If there's persistent ground effects like a flame wall or a cloud kill or something like that have a duration that stay in place, we want the sort of power that Scene Regions gives us for like what happens when a token enters that area or moves through it or starts their turn in that area. We have all of those sorts of automation capabilities already developed because of our work on Scene Regions, and it would lend itself really, really well to templates if AoE effects could have similar capabilities. So advanced measured templates is all about making AoE abilities much more useful and powerful and functional and automatable in core Foundry without needing to rely on system code or module code. Thank you very much for the anonymous sub gifts. Whoever did that, that's very generous, and thank you so much for your generosity. That's really an awesome gesture. Public service announcement from Nath. I've been asked by our friends at Paizo to point out that in advance of tomorrow's PaizoCon panel, in advance of the stream, you can ask questions for Q&A with the system developers in the Paizo Digital Products channel on the PaizoCon Discord server. So in anticipation of the PaizoCon panel tomorrow morning, if you want to get some of your questions in queue for Q&A, you can do that on the PaizoCon Discord server. All right, next feature in the prioritization poll is document tags and improved search. Now, document tags is something that would allow us to annotate individual actors with meaningful metadata that would make it easy to discover them. So for example, I'm in a D&D world right now. Some obvious things that you might tag for certain actors is that Abasi is human, lawful good, Ansubek is a monstrosity and chaotic evil, and Ansubek is CR13, and there's all kinds of things that if they were tags, they would be quickly accessible for search and for discovery. Now, the 5e system itself has done a really great job of implementing a compendium browser, as has, in fact, oh, I wonder why these class icons are not showing up for me. That's really fascinating. Huh. It may be a 5e bug that I'm encountering here. It might be a system issue. I don't know. D&D modern content, character classes. Let's try reloading. Curious. I'm not going to diverge into debugging, but I'm not sure. Maybe I need to update my 5e game system. I'm not sure. Character classes. Yeah, strange one. Strange one indeed. It's a dev build thing. Okay, maybe I have too modern a D&D system version. I should go back to the safety of 503. My apologies to the Foundry dev team for making you look bad. You do great work. But anyways, the 5e compendium browser is really amazing in terms of like if we want to search for creatures, for example, like we want to look for monsters that are CR10 or whatnot. But the D&D team has had to do a lot of work to make that happen. They've had to devise this mechanism sort of from scratch to be able to say like, oh, I want, CR10 I want a CR10 monstrosity. If we had a system like document tags, it would expose that sort of behavior and functionality very broadly for all systems to easily take advantage of without having to build a bespoke solution for each system. There would still be system work required, but it would make it much easier to search for and to filter for a certain combination of things. Like I want a weapon that is a martial ranged weapon that is a very rare item. It would be much easier to do this sort of advanced filtering and searching of content if we had this document tags system. So anyways, that's an exciting option of things that could exist if this option on the poll were to be chosen. Next one up, I guess I've been kind of letting you all just sit staring at the Demon Queen Awakens dungeon in the background for a while. I wonder if maybe I should switch up the eye candy a little bit since I've been talking for like an hour with this in the background. Obviously, I'm not focused too much on the VTT itself right now. Tell you what, before I switch away from Demon Queen, let me take a pause and show off some of the exciting new things that we've added to Demon Queen lately. We have a Demon Queen update coming very soon that I'm very excited about. It overhauls the adventure a bit. It moves everything to app v2, uses the new v2 journals. It adds a little bit of new content. It migrates for the D&D side of things. It migrates creatures and spells and things to use the new 2024 modern variants where applicable. It adds scene regions for automation of certain things like Ansubek's water or the slide trap or things like that. We updated and improved all of the macros for automation of different features so they're more functional. We added beautiful animated doors to the adventure using the new V13 animated doors. So your exploration of the Vault of Aten is now more immersive and more beautiful as you explore the doors. It's just such a nice touch that makes it much more fun to traverse the dungeon and to explore the dungeon. We fixed a bunch of bugs, some continuity updates, whole litany of bug fixes. I'm sure I'm forgetting a ton of things. We rebalanced the lighting profile of the maps to be a little bit more subtle, a little bit more beautiful. Whole host of changes to Demon Queen that make the adventure even better. I mean, it's a short adventure, but it's one we remain very proud of. And so, yeah, I'm really happy that we've updated that adventure, and that V13 update for Demon Queen will be coming out very soon, and of course freely available to everyone who's already purchased it. So it's no like paid upgrade or anything. You get it for free, and yeah, it's very something we're very very proud of. Let's see. Nath, is there anything else about the DQA update that is like a big talking point that I should comment on before I switch away from it? While I wait for Nath in chat to answer that for me, I'll talk about improved drawing tools. So another option on the V14 Patreon vote would be improved drawing tools. As many of you know, our drawing tools are very okay. They are really, really great at being adequate. They do what needs to be done, and yeah, it could be much worse. We can make drawings, and we can highlight stuff, and we can put them in the scene, underneath objects, or we can put them over the scene, over top of objects. We can do all kinds of good stuff with drawing tools, but they are not the most powerful thing that Foundry has, and they could be more powerful. We could make our drawing tools much better. It would involve some pretty significant work, though, which is why it's an option on the poll and not just something we just kind of like do by default. But if we were to do advanced drawing tools, then you would get all kinds of new things, drop shadows, more different options for fill versus stroke versus this versus that, gradients, maybe gradient fills, gradient strokes, maybe more text options for like paragraphical text, like multi-line text, maybe more text formatting options for text in drawings, all kinds of things that could be done as part of this. Maybe brushes for like, we have obviously like a freehand, but we don't have anything like a paintbrush. So we could add things like paintbrushes or eraser tools where you could erase part of drawings or paint in part of drawings. So there could be a lot of things that advanced drawing tools could add. A more powerful UI UX as like a palette, like color picker palette or brush tip palette, things like that. Like the types of things you maybe expect from a more robust piece of drawing software. Now, we're never gonna, like, the goal isn't to become a Photoshop competitor or a Clip Studio Paint competitor or something. Like, we're never gonna go that far, but something like a kind of like Canva style UI UX for free drawing would be a nice target aspirationally. Yeah, Nath says mostly good. Door improvement, bug fixes, water area, macro improvements. Like an example of a cool thing like with the scene regions that I can show off. So for example, I've got my character here. Let's import one of the starter heroes maybe. So like here's our halfling monk Perrin. One of the cool things is like I'll go onto the surface of the water, and you see here Perrin is like swimming on the surface of the water. But what happens if I dive down? What happens if I decrease my elevation? One of the new things you can do in V13 is there's key bindings for that. We can use Q and E to either increase elevation off the surface of the water, or I can decrease elevation. I can go underwater. And you see here visually the silhouette of Perrin is like getting smaller as he goes deeper and deeper under the water. So there's like this cool visual effect we did so that as Perrin is like diving down deeper and deeper below the surface of the water, he's sort of fading away into the visible depths, and that interacts with the mechanic here. So like going into the water, coming out of the water. It's kind of just like a kind of nice little touch that happens automatically, and the way that that happens automatically is via the magic of scene regions. So there's, you know, scene region that does the clever work there. Gradually gives you the bends. Yeah, check for bends. Check for oxygen bubbles in the bloodstream, or whatever. That's probably wrong. I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly what the bends are. I know they happen when you surface too fast. Someone can correct my diagnosis. I play one on Twitch. Actually, am in fact a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. All right, yeah. Let's switch to something fun. We'll switch to like Ember pre-production. Not the kind of deep dive into features I expected. Yeah. Well said. All right. I'm not going to make this too much of an Ember stream, but it does at least give me some things to kind of put on screen for a little bit of eye candy to look at while I talk about things. Anyway, so back to the feature poll. We have improved vision and detection modes. So that is a very cool option that would supercharge the capability of vision modes in Foundry VTT. So as you probably know, what our vision modes do is they allow your character to perceive the world in different ways. So like this character just has basic vision, but what if I switch it to, say, light amplification, or, you know, I can then see in areas where there is no light source, I can see this kind of green, kind of like night vision goggles, or monochrome, like this character, suppose they only see the world in shades of gray. Or, you know, we can have a tremor sense vision mode where you don't see, but you're able to detect kind of aspects of the environment, sort of details of like sound or tremor waves. So there's different things you can do. Dark vision, of course. So like if there's no light, if I turn off the lights in here, you know, the character with dark vision will be able to sort of see. Was there some maybe there's global light in this scene, so it's maybe not the best example, but you get the idea. You know what dark vision is. Anyways, some limitations of vision modes currently is that like you kind of set one up here for the token, and then there's a little bit of a clunky interaction between the vision mode and the detection modes, which do different things. Like, oh, suppose I can sense all creatures up to 60 feet, then, you know, I'm able to, without line of sight, my character can detect that this guard is over there. I don't have to even have line of sight. It's sort of like a true sight, kind of like true sense. There's all kinds of different detection modes that can let you, you know, sense the world around you. However, there's just UX limitations to this that don't necessarily work in the best way that we would want. And so improved vision and detection modes would be a little bit of like a redesign and improvement upon this feature that would add more powerful vision modes, more powerful detection modes, but also a better user experience for configuring them. So, you know, you would be able to, for example, in the token HUD, I would be able to have like a pop-out tray where if my character has multiple detection modes available or multiple vision options available, I could easily switch, say, between like dark vision and see invisibility, or dark vision and tremor sense, or dark vision and blind sight. I could sort of switch very quickly the way that I would be perceiving the world. And you could configure sort of multiple different like vision presets that work together and that you can cycle between. It would also allow us to have new types of detection, like imprecise detection, where you kind of get the vague sense that something is somewhere, but you don't really see it for sure. Or important detection modes, where like currently, you could imagine, say I have like a see invisibility, and like this, I've made this character invisible, so I can only, as the GM I see it, but that's because I'm a game master. As a player, as a different sort of character, I would not see this invisible creature, but this character that has see invisibility does see them. So we have this kind of power already, but we don't have some of the features that would make it more useful. And so I think like improved vision and improved detection modes is basically us being able to double down on the framework that we initially bought and do even more or do better with it to make it even more useful and even more flexible. I should probably pause for a moment and take some questions. I think it's been a little while since I did that. Looking for a question. Question, Adrian Parsons asks, if chosen, might a vision distance multiplier be added? Preferably selected per token, like in the old days where D&D low light vision let you see twice as far. Yeah, vision multiplier, like or sort of light level upgrading is something that's been on our list as well. We didn't explicitly mention it on the poll, but I do think it's kind of in the realm of thinking as improved vision modes are concerned. One of the things that we'd actually like to do, which might sound like a step backwards at first, but I think it would actually be a step forward, is we kind of want to get rid of this actual like vision range field where we say like your token has one vision range, because that's not really the case. What you have is you have a collection of senses, or some of which are natural, some of which are magical. Like I have 30 feet of see invisibility, I have 30 feet of dark vision, I have infinite light perception. So it's really not like, there is no like one number that is like, this is the number of how far this character can see. There's really like, how far you can see depends on what sort of senses you have. And so we kind of want to get rid of some of that awkward interaction. And so things like a multiplier for your vision distance, that is the kind of thing that like that could be configured on like per sense. So like you might have, infinite distance of regular light perception, but you might have 120 feet of low light vision. And then you wouldn't have to pick a particular number. You'd be able to just configure those different components of visibility. Another thing that we really want to do with improved vision and detection modes is make it easier for the actor to affect the token. So there's a weird like disconnect at the moment where like on the D&D actor sheet, I can configure and say, oh, this character has 60 feet of dark vision. And I've just gone and configured that, but that isn't actually what my token has. So I've gotten into this situation where somehow the D&D, the character sheet and the token configuration have come out of sync, and that's obviously not ideal. So we need to have better methods for the actor owned and managed by the game system to configure the token according to the rules that the actor should have, and possibly say like any active effects that actor has. Ideally, we would be handling things like, suppose you cast like a spell that lets you see into the ethereal plane. Ideally, handling that spell would not have anything to do with opening your token config. Ideally, handling that spell would be on your character sheet, you're going to cast the spell, you're going to apply an active effect that spell gives you the buff, the buff effect that lets you see into the ethereal plane. That active effect gets applied to your character sheet, and the active effect then automatically changes the way that your token sees the world. So like that sort of pipeline of the, the used spell item becomes the active effect on the actor configures the token's visibility, it all flows through automatically. Like that's the pipeline that should be happening here, and we don't have that yet. And so we want to build that sort of better vision pipeline, and that it would require a non-trivial amount of work, so that's why it's a big enough feature to merit a place on the V14 poll. Let me grab a question from chat. Question from Christian Serrano: is it or would it be possible to add an additional adjustment for ambient light so that we could set multiple thresholds for dim versus dark and versus pitch black? I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but is the idea that it would be like 5 feet of bright and then 5 feet of dim and then 5 more feet of bright somehow, like alternating back and forth? Or I guess I'm not quite sure I understand the question of why there would be more than one threshold, but I'm sure there's a good reason for that. I'm just not immediately grasping. Question from BR Hall: would this integrate with PF2E's vague, imprecise, and precise senses? That would be absolutely ideal if that were the case. Now, it's a little bit tricky when a game system has kind of gotten out ahead of core, solving a problem that ultimately core should solve, because then the game system is put in a little bit of a difficult dilemma of, well, we already solved this problem, so like, should we spend valuable development time changing the way we solved the problem to use the new core mechanism, or should we just be grateful that we've already solved the problem and we don't need to worry about it? I think like a key, one of my favorite nitpicks, and this is going to sound like throwing people under the bus, it's really not, and I'll explain why, but like one of my favorite, pet gripes is that like we haven't yet gotten the PF2E system using active effects for things that are like temporary buffs and debuffs. Now, there's a really great and totally valid reason for that, which is that the PF2E system solved this problem using items before we added a sufficiently powerful active effect system. So, like, the PF2E system saw the need to solve this, they solved it, and then we added, here we come along saying, oh, there's a better way now. Well, good code is working code. And so, like, it's tough for us to say, like, you should take your solution and change it because there's a way that core envisions it done. That's not really fair for us to say, or there has to be a clear reason to make that step. So you ask, like, oh, would this integrate with PF2E's vague, imprecise, or precise senses? I absolutely hope it would. But it's also a tricky thing because the PF2E system's already solved that, and they've already solved it using their own clever solution. So, we come and we add a core solution that we think is really good. We would absolutely hope that systems would adopt that and that it would make it easier for them to solve certain problems, or it would give them the ability to solve certain problems that maybe they'd been previously stuck on, where like before we couldn't do this, or it just was too difficult and so we didn't bother, or something like that. But I don't think we would necessarily guarantee that every system would immediately adopt this. I think it, TBD. All right, another question from Chaos. Right now, a common issue for vision stuff is the lack of interaction with active effects. Yeah, so I think maybe this was asked before I said a bunch of monologuing that I just did, but I think somewhere in my monologue should have made clear that yes, active effects then translating to token properties is something that we would want to do a better job with. I10X asks, right now the ordering of vision modes determines a lot of things for how scenes are displayed. Would improvement include more granular controls for stuff like that? For example, would we be saying that vision mode overrides light vision even though it's higher in the order? So I think, A10, that honestly, I almost think like what we tried to do wrong was we tried too hard to solve everything all at once. So what we did wrong was we tried to make it to where your character sees the world simultaneously using the union of all vision properties that you have. And what that means is it's very difficult to figure out like what should take priority. Should we be showing a certain area of the map in grayscale because they have dark vision, or should that area of the map be animated in a certain way because they also have tremor sense, or should creatures in that area of the map be in color because they have see invisibility, or should they be in black and white because they're standing in an area that doesn't have light in it? Like it becomes very hard to make the sorts of decisions of like what should take precedence. And so I think the mistake that we made was trying to solve everything all at once. And I think that what I envision we want to do is something more akin to the new movement modes in V13. So like at a certain point in time, I may be jumping. I could jump 20 feet or I could swim 20 feet, but I'm not simultaneously swimming and jumping. I'm doing one of those things at a time. So at a certain time, when you control a token, you could easily toggle between saying, I want to know how this token sees the world if I'm using my dark vision, versus I want to know how this token sees the world if I'm using my tremor sense, or I want to know how this token sees the world when I tap into my thermal vision or my see invisibility or whatever. And now some of those things might combine. Like I'm not saying you would have to be constantly switching back and forth. You might get some of those things together, but I think forcing everything to come as one sort of simultaneously resolved vision package makes it a lot harder to actually do. So I think the solution is actually to break it apart a little bit and make it easy for you to choose how to ingest that information, so you can see like, okay, well, what am I tracking if I lean on my tremor sense? And now what am I tracking if I lean on my ability to see invisible creatures? Now, hopefully that sounds like an appealing solution to people. I could see a counter argument where someone might say, that sounds like a step backwards because I'm only able to do one thing at once. But I think it will actually be more powerful, because as we add more modes or more detection types or more things into the system, I just think it's going to become hugely chaotic if like everything has to simultaneously work with everything. Okay, cool. I may have missed some questions, but let's move on. I'm taking a sweet long time to get through this V14 feature vote, but I hope y'all are finding this conversation to be compelling, even if it's slow. I'll just keep sort of swapping up the scene every once in a while so you can like look at some different things, I guess. While we talk. Okay, the next feature is Manual Fog of War. This is something that Interestingly enough, I commented earlier in the stream about how I felt that, when I started working on Foundry early on, I had this kind of whiteboard list of things that I envisioned Foundry would do. It's interesting that manual Fog of War was never on that list. It's not something I really ever cared about. Like, I didn't really personally want to be manually revealing sections of the map. That's not the gameplay style I used, and so I think a consequence of that is like my own bias in terms of the things that I care about in my own gameplay kind of is shown through as a rationale for like why we've never invested serious dev time into making manual Fog of War happen. But I totally acknowledge that it is a absolutely valuable and important gameplay style for a lot of people, and so I think it deserves its spot on this poll. Whether it will win or not, I don't know. We'll see how many people really want it. But I think the way that it would work is, instead of having Fog of War exploration of the scene be dynamic, based on, like, happen automatically based on what your token sees. Now let me switch to like a dungeon or something, so there's actual Fog of War present. Yeah, so suppose, we're here. This is Fog of War. We come in from outside the dungeon. There's areas that we can see. There's areas we can't see. There's areas that we have seen previously but no longer see. So what manual Fog of War would allow a game master to do is to, just grab a rectangle and be like, okay, you see this whole room now. And by just marking off that room, even if the token does not yet see the whole room, you would still see the room. It would be as if your token had moved into a position where you saw the whole room and then you moved back out of that room. So having marked this area as revealed, the token would then see it like this without ever having to have actually stepped foot into that area. And then if the DM said, oh, oops, actually, you didn't notice what's down, you don't notice yet what's in the middle of the room, we can then, draw and say, oh, but not that bit. And, we could take away fog exploration for a certain thing. And yeah, like MIJ Mike says, it's useful for when one player describes the room to other people. I think that's a real thing that happens even with dynamic Fog of War. Is like Cephras here is still outside, and Barrow pokes his head into the dungeon and peeks around the corner, and then the GM's like, all right, let me pause the game while I narrate to you. In the orb room at the center of this space, you see a large circular frame. Though not too badly damaged itself, the room around it is littered with further pieces of metal, gears, lengths of braided steel cable. I won't subject you to the whole read aloud, but the GM starts giving that description, and poor Cephras player out here outside the dungeon is like, the game's paused. I hear what you're describing, but I don't see it, and so therefore I am confused because I'm not connecting the visual with the text. And I think that's totally valid, totally a valid and useful thing. And I think even for groups that use dynamic Fog of War, I think that could be a very useful thing to have. And moreover, I think the vision for manual Fog of War would be that it's not either or. It's not you have to, like, when I go to configure my scene, there's not a drop down that's like, okay, do you want Fog of War exploration to be dynamic or do you want it to be manual? I don't want it to be a choice. I want manual Fog of War to be a yes and. I want it to be that, Fog of War exploration is dynamic if you have it configured, but it can also be manual. So in combination with dynamic exploration, the GM can also say, well, you peek around the corner and you learn what's in this triangle. And both of those two things can happen together. So yeah, it's a really important, and some would say critical, feature that Foundry does not have yet, and so I think it's a very worthy poll candidate that deserves its chance to be voted on. All right, let me pause for questions. Maybe there aren't any. Question: would manual Fog of War provide vision, revealing creatures that might be around corners that vision centered on a token wouldn't see? It would not provide vision. So this would be specifically the Fog of War system. Now, in a map that... Let's imagine that this map, for a minute, does not have walls. So one of the main uses for Fog of War is like, I don't want to bother setting any of this up. I don't want my... I'm just going to delete, boop, gone. I don't want to bother setting any of this up. I just want to, have a scene where maybe global illumination is disabled and tokens don't, have a vision range otherwise, but I want to be able to mark off certain areas of the map as explored. So this would be purely a system for what you would see in a Fog of War capacity. So like what you have already seen or what you could see. Whether it would interact with walls or not depends on whether your scene has walls. But imagine a scene that doesn't have any walls because you didn't want to go to the trouble of setting that up. You just throw down a map image, you put your tokens down, no time spent on walls at all. You would just want to give that token non-infinite vision so they don't just immediately see the whole map. But if there's not global illumination and you don't give the token an infinite vision range, then the token would only be seeing like a little bubble around their current location, and you could use manual Fog of War to like reveal certain additional sections of the map that they see that are like further away or something like that. All right, let's go back to Jink GM asks, "Is this in V13?" Yeah, I am running V13 right now. Of course, it's the stable version of Foundry. Why wouldn't I be? This is also Ember though, so this is not purely V13. This is our Ember game that we are making. It's just something nice to be able to put on screen while I talk about things. No, Jink, the manual Fog of War is a feature that might be added in V14, depending on whether it wins the vote or not. Okay, back to the list of options. Placeable items. Placeable items is something that would allow you to drop loot or other things possibly onto the map. It wouldn't necessarily have to just be treasure. It could be something like a lever or a switch or a cog, something that you want the party to be able to interact with. But yeah, imagine you have, some treasure like the spell wrought pen, and you want to be able to put that spell wrought pen right onto the map. Now, if at the moment, if I drag and drop this pen item onto the map, nothing at all happens, but you could imagine a future state of the world in which, this adamantine breastplate, we could put a piece of loot right onto the map, and that would let the player characters interact with it, discover it, pick it up. It could be visibility controlled, like it might be hidden at first. It might be gated behind certain visibility rules. It could be a container, so like there could be like a treasure chest that contains multiple items that you can engage with. It could be a way to represent like shops or merchants in the game, is you interact with it and you see the merchant's inventory. there's all kinds of things that could be done with this feature, and it could be quite open-ended. So just, kind of a lot of the same way that you can, put an actor into the scene to create a character, you can put items in the scene to create inanimate objects that the player can then interact with, whether it means pick up or do something with or use as a trigger point for certain downstream automations. Like it could be like a lever item, and you pull the lever and a door opens somewhere else on the map, or something like that. We're already doing things like this in Ember. I'm sure some of you who have been paying attention to Ember's development already know this. We have a whole system in Ember for interactable objects, and some of that code that's already developed in Ember would probably be useful in Core. So for example, in this sort of like otherworldly Wizard's Tower type environment with these like force bridges, these little orb pedestals, these are interactable objects. So like I can use my interaction tool and I can interact with the thing, and I can, activate the force field, or I can lock it, or I can unlock it. I can do whatever I need to with the, with these objects. So I think there might actually be a bug here, because this might be an Ember bug. I should be able to turn these bridges off. So that might have broken in our last update, now that I'm seeing it right now. Let me try a different example. Ember is in alpha, folks. There may be occasional bugs. I take the blame for it, but yeah, that's supposed to do something more interesting. Of course, the curse of demoing something in live time. But like here, I was talking about like, let's see if this one works. So there's a lever on the wall here. If you see it here, like, if we pull this lever, then like the secret door over here opens. So like you could kind of wire up these sorts of interactions, or like the rotating light beam mirrors that we have in this dungeon is of course like a key. You've probably all seen these by this point, but like this kind of idea of like the interactable object, there could be some sort of core version of this, something like that. It wouldn't be exactly what we built for Ember, because the Ember stuff works a little differently, to be honest. But yeah. All right, let's see. Where was I? Yeah, so that's placeable items. The next feature is currently the one that is leading the poll in its current state, which is pop-out window applications, pop-out application windows. So pop-out windows would let you split out of Core Foundry a UI window like this character sheet. It would let me do something like maybe click the triple dots and then click, say, pop out, and it would then become a separate OS level window that you could put on a different monitor. Or somewhere else on the same monitor. And so it would allow you to, say, have the text content of the adventure, and you could take that text content of the adventure and you could like put it on your other screen to save screen space, so that you could keep the full view of your main monitor on the beautiful battle map that you want to explore. So being able to pop out a window to a separate window would be really great for anyone who has multiple screens, perhaps of limited use for people who don't have multiple screens. But based on the current poll results, it seems like plenty of people do have multiple screens, and therefore the value is apparent. We'll see if it continues far enough to win the poll or not, but here's Rattletrap, our lovable Arcturian construct friend. We'll see if it wins the poll or not, but it seems to be currently in the lead. Only day one, though. Day one of 14. All right. Let's see. The next feature... Oh, wait, let me answer a question. Jarvis Gang asks, question, I'm so excited for the eventual pop-out windows feature. A timely moment for me to comment on it. I have to confirm that these pop-out windows would each have their own distinct URL, so that, let's say, another computer, not just another screen on the side, could have its own dashboard web page view with a number of these windows arranged nicely. I don't know that that's true. It's something we might be able to explore as a feature, but I don't know that a particular pop-out window would have a predefined URL that you could just go directly to it. Certainly, like, the way that I think the feature is going to work, it kind of relies on there being a sort of master or parent session in Foundry VTT, and then the popped-out window is sort of a child that belongs to that parent session. We haven't solved all the technical details yet. We've solved enough of them, or we've foreshadowed enough of them that there's confidence we can deliver this. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure I'd be able to promise that you could have like a distinct URL for a specific character sheet. I think that would maybe be a stretch goal that I'm not sure would be the case. How many pop-out windows? In theory, it would be an unlimited number, although there would be a small performance cost associated with each one. So at some point, the user experience that you would have with multiple pop-out windows would become constrained by, does it start to feel bad? Or do you run out of space to put them, or something like that? All right. Moving on to special effect regions, the last feature on the poll. Special effect regions would be a technique that would allow us to add visual effects to scenes that do not necessarily inherently mean that there is lighting. So for example, an example of this would be like the interactivity with them wasn't working, but for example, these animated like force bridges in Vortest Tower here, this would be a good example of something that would be like possible with a special effect region, because I could take the scene regions feature and I could say, okay, here's my force bridge. And then I could theoretically go to behaviors and I could say, like, I want a animation behavior. And I could put an animation on that region that would interact with the scene and make it visually more beautiful. Other way, there's so many ways this could be used. Other ways would be like, people were saying complimentary things about, say, like the water animation. If we, for example, go to like, we'll go to the Wind Raiders hideout. Suppose we have an area of water in a scene, and you would want the surface of that water to be animated. Sorry, it's a big scene, heavy load time. Surprisingly heavy. Let's try a refresh. I'm skeptical. That's a scene that's in our dev backlog area. I probably shouldn't be showing it on screen anyways, because it's not part of the Ember Alpha yet. Maybe I'll stick to a scene that is known good. Let's go to locations, maybe. Which was a good one that has water? How about seawall alleys? I'm up to 3 now in my bug count for anyone keeping score. All right, so yeah, so hopefully this one, no issues. Water, yes. So here in this scene, in fact, we actually already have a scene region for this one. So on the regions layer, there's a surface water region that has a certain elevation. It's actually lower than the docks, so that's why it goes underneath the docks here, because you can be like, say you're this sailor walking on the docks, you could drop into the water -10, and then you could go kind of underneath the docks, and you'd be kind of under the docks, but still in the water. So anyways, and there you're now under the surface of the water at, say, -20 or something. So, but anyways, yeah, so the water region here, like if you called out where is there water on the map, it's another thing where if you had your map structured in a certain way, you could then take a static surface of water that's just a still image, and you, via the power of magical 2D animation shaders, we could apply some animation to it and make the water in your map look beautiful. It's another example of the type of thing we could do with special effects regions. Another example of the kind of thing we could do with special effects regions, like in this map in Lightless Halls, there's certain like pits of outer space, like certain areas where there's sort of a pit drop. And if you look closely, I don't know if it's coming through clearly enough on the stream, but the kind of like distant starscape of the void is animated back there. So that's another thing. Like that's the kind of thing that theoretically could be done with an animation attached to a scene region. But you could also do things like fire or smoke or fog cloud or anything like that. And so the possibilities are quite robust. Other things we could theoretically do with scene regions would be like particle emitters. So for example, you know, in this scene here, we have like this like waterfall here that like part of what makes the waterfall look good is sort of like the particle foam spray. That's something that like you could define. We're not doing it here using scene regions, but we're under the hood doing something sort of like scene regions here, where you could define a certain polygon area and then you could configure particles to emit in that area according to certain rules. So yeah, you know, lots of things, lots of visual flourishes that could be done with special effects regions that would potentially make scenes look much more punchy and beautiful. All right, let's see. I think this is probably a good time for me to take a break. I've been going for hour and 45 right now, so it's a good moment to do a break, and it's a good moment to do a giveaway as well. So I think what I would suggest we do is let's do the giveaway at the kind of halfway point of the stream, and I will AFK for a little bit. I'll just put the little Cosmos map ticking away as my AFK background screen, and as I take a short break, I will grab the list of all of you who are here in chat, and I'll pop you all into a rollable table and do a giveaway. And I don't know what I'm going to give away. I guess for someone who doesn't have a Foundry VTT license, I'll do a you can get a license key for the software. And then if you do have a license key, let's say we'll do a choice of content, which could be I'll give a menu of options. You can get Demon Queen Awakens, House Divided. Everyone is asking about Ember. I kind of wanted to save. I want to save the Ember giveaways for the Ember themed streams. Like I have been showing some Ember stuff here, But we have 2 Ember specific streams planned for Anniversary Week. We've got the one with Kaora on Sunday, and then we've got an Ember stream on next Saturday with me that is like really specially focused on Ember. So I want to save the Ember Alpha giveaways for those 2 streams. But if you want a chance to win Ember Alpha, the streams you should tune into is Kaora on Sunday and me next Saturday. But what I'll do today is either Foundry VTT, Demon Queen Awakens, House Divided. We can do Phandelver and Below if you want an official D&D adventure, or we could do, say, Abomination Vaults if you want a Pathfinder adventure. So we can give like a menu of options, and we'll pick a couple winners, and each of you can pull a piece of content out of that menu, as you prefer. So yeah, I'll be back in just 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll do that giveaway. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you're logged in on Twitch. So you can't be like logged out. You can't be anonymous. Make sure you show up in the viewers list, because that's what's going to populate the table. And I'll be back in just a minute. All right, I'm back. Thank you for giving me a moment to take a quick break. And I've got the table ready to go. 243 of you logged in to Twitch, which is excellent. So let's go ahead and give this a spin. And what you'll need to know, and I suspect probably some people are going to be AFK, so we might have to go through a couple rounds of this. I think I'm going to do 4 winners. So that's a good, healthy number. And if you are chosen, what you need to do is pop your acceptance in chat to let us know, like, yes, I accept the prize, and then you can DM this channel. You can DM me to get in touch and give us your Foundry username and let us know which thing you want, and we'll get the winning prize out to each of the winners. Now, I expect we're going to have a couple of people who are AFK, so I'm going to go ahead and roll 4 winners all at once, so it doesn't take us too long to do like one at a time. So I'm going to give it 4 spins on the table, and we'll see who our winners are. Drum roll, please. To help celebrate our 5-year anniversary, thank you all for being here. The first winner is Tasami, T-A-S-A-M-I-I, Tasami. The second winner is BKG Lad, Background Lad, perhaps? The third winner is Quantic Twitch. Quantic Twitch? Quant IQ Twitch. One of those, perhaps. The fourth winner is Harry the Gray. So there we go. There's 4 winners. We'll see if we go 4 for 4 or if we get any rerolls. BKG Lad accepts. Congratulations. Happy that you're here to accept that. We'll see if we get anyone else. Quant IQ Witch is also an accept. Wonderful, wonderful. Tasami accept. Excellent. Very good. Just gonna see if Harry the Gray is here, and then we might have a reroll, or we might be done. You may pretend, Mike. You may pretend. I think it would be a record if we go 4 for 4. We almost never get that. All right, Harry the Gray, going once, Going twice. Last call. You're out of here. Harry the Grey, no more. Our replacement winner is, drumroll please, Hypervole. Hypervole. Hyperbole. Play on words, perhaps? It's probably Hypervole, but you never know. Usernames are clever. Huzzah, I accept. Excellent. All right, we got everybody in. Thank you all. Congratulations to the 4 of you. What you will need to do is send a DM to this channel, Foundry VTT on Twitch. Give me your foundryvtt.com username so I know which account stuff should go to, and let us know what thing you would like. To reiterate the choices, you can get a Foundry VTT software license key. You can get a Demon Queen Awakens product key. So I'll pull some of these things up so you know what they are. The Demon Queen Awakens is the little adventure I was showing earlier in the stream. You can get a House Divided product key. It's a longer adventure, one I'm very proud of. It's an excellent choice if you don't know it or don't have it. Otherwise, if you want some official content, Phandelver and Below, official D&D content, or Abomination Vaults, official Pathfinder 2e content. Give us a shout what you are interested in, what you'd like, and we'll get those winning prizes out to you shortly. Okay, now getting back to today's agenda. That finishes the roundup of what's the Patreon V14 vote all about. So that covers that, and I think what I'm going to get to next is just talking about some of the major features that we added in version 13. Now, we've already talked about some of them. Some of them have already come up kind of indirectly. I think the biggest one that you may be noticing or may have noticed is the improvements in the UI. I think this is something that hopefully everyone sees and enjoys and appreciates, but it is kind of a little bit subtle, and depending on how often you use Foundry, it may be immediately obvious, or it may be not so obvious what these improvements or changes are. But the UI has kind of been comprehensively redone. It's a little bit more dark theme by default. All of the different UI elements kind of fade in and fade out contextually as you use them, so they are a little bit less obtrusive when not in use. There's a new kind of dedicated chat entry box widget where even when your sidebar is collapsed at all times, I can post a little chat message that doesn't even need the sidebar to be popped out to do it. There's these little chat cards that sort of fly in temporarily as little like temporary chat notifications. So for example, suppose a character uses an ability and you have chat minimized, then you'll still see the little card pop up no matter what you're looking at. So you still see that a thing happened. And if you want to, it just stays for a few seconds. And then if you want to get the full details, you can then pop out the sidebar. In fact, I don't know, y'all tell me, is it useful for me to have the notes on the right-hand side and then to show stuff on the left? Or should I switch to just like a full screen Foundry view at this point? Anyone have a preference, whether they like the kind of to follow along with the split screen, or whether I should just go full screen? Top and bottom split. Can't read the notes. I can zoom in on those. That's a fair shout. I probably should have done that with previously. Someone should have told me to zoom in. Why didn't y'all tell me to zoom in? Full screen, please, people say. Mixed messages. Conflicting. All right. Well, we'll do split screen is very nice. Nice with the zoom now. Let's leave it split screen for a little bit. I'll maybe go full screen. I'd have to swap stuff out in OBS, and yeah, I don't know. We'll take it as it comes. But anyways, these little chat notifications, they're really cool. I love them. I think it's a great idea. But if you don't love them, they are configurable. So one of the things we did with the new V13 UI is that there's a UI configuration setting, which pops out a separate menu where we're putting any of the settings that are specifically related to UI configuration. So for example, I'll go through some of these, but in particular at the bottom, chat notifications, you can disable those if you don't like them. If you want to get rid of the little chat cards, you can do that. Other things that you can change, I showed how like the UI elements kind of fade in when you mouse over them. If you don't like that, that's another thing you can disable. You can just turn your inactive opacity to 1, and then you would see something like this where all of the UI elements are fully visible at all times. So if you prefer having that more like present UI, it's easy to do. You can just turn the inactive opacity to 1, and you'll have those that sort of fully visible at all times. Other things you can customize is how quickly things fade in or fade out. Another thing you can customize is UI scale. So this is something that I think is very exciting. The old options that we had for like how big the UI should be was pretty limited to just like, I can sort of make the text bigger, but making text bigger without making everything bigger it's a little awkward. It doesn't always work. And so what we've done, and so like here, if I make the font bigger, yes, it's making the font bigger, but is it actually making the UI better, or is it just making the font bigger? I don't know. It's maybe doing both. Suit yourself, but font size on its own is an imperfect solution. So we now have a better tool, I think, which is called interface scale, where I can actually make the whole UI bigger. So the whole UI can become more dense while retaining its overall layout. Or if I have a really big monitor, I can actually make the whole UI more unobtrusive. I can make the whole UI smaller. If I'm, say, like on a 4K screen or something, and I don't actually need the UI to be as big as it is by default. So the UI scale slider is really, I think, really great. And it's something that doesn't apply to everything yet. Like you notice that this window itself is not scaling when I do this, nor would something like an actor sheet. The actor sheet also does not yet. I say yet. I think it's something that probably we'll try and someday do. But the actor sheet also does not yet scale with this. But adding the interface scale for our sort of permanent UI elements is the first step on the way towards doing that. Another thing that you can do in this UI configuration is you can separately configure whether you want dark mode or light mode for apps versus interface. So if you change applications to be light mode, then the UI windows look more similar to Foundry V12 with this kind of parchment light background and dark text. So this allows you, if you want to mix and match the sort of light theme windows with the dark theme sidebar, the dark theme framing. You can also, though, do light theme sidebar. So that's a new thing that V12 didn't have, is you did not have the ability for example, like light mode in the sidebar. So that's now an option. And yeah, you can have light mode everywhere, you can have dark mode everywhere, or you can mix and match to your preference if you want one of one and the other. So that's just the sort of tip of the iceberg, but the kind of main bulk of UI overhaul that we did. Some other things that we really overhauled: the Players app is now a little bit different. The scene controls now more gracefully expand to tolerate a larger number of buttons. So those of you running a lot of modules now have more space for scene controls. The scene navigation dropdown now is vertical with a expand collapse instead of a ribbon that goes horizontally across the screen. This makes it able to accommodate more scenes, and it overlaps, it overflows to multiple columns if necessary. So you can, in theory, pack a lot of scenes into scene navigation if you want, although our design intention is that scene navigation is something where you only keep a small handful of scenes present at any particular given time. So that's a change. I already showed the chat notifications thing. The macro hotbar now has some change as well. The macros themselves used to be like a separate folder disconnected from the right-hand sidebar, but now macros are part of the right-hand sidebar. So there's a whole like directory structure of macros on the right-hand side, along with all the other types of sidebar directories. Yeah, I think those are some of like the most significant UI changes. Now, of course, all of this is powered under the hood by our comprehensive migration to Application V2. Application V2 is a new way of rendering UI elements in Foundry that from a programmatic, from like a software design perspective, is much better, much easier to work with, much more powerful. And so one of the main things we accomplished in V13 is getting to a point where all of our applications, 100% of our applications in the core software are now App V2, and that's something we're hugely proud of having accomplished. Another thing that is something that I think I'm very proud of is a little bit of a technical under the hood thing, but in addition to converting all of our applications to App V2, we also converted all of our code base to ES modules. So for those of you who may be developers in the audience, what that means is that we were able to move entirely to ESM, no more sort of plain vanilla JavaScript. Everything is module based now. Everything uses imports, and that helps us a lot with the way we maintain the code. It also makes our documentation much better. So one of the things that you may have noticed as you move to V13 is that the coverage of our API docs is now quite a bit better. Now, I don't want to declare victory yet because I will be the first to acknowledge our API docs can continue to improve a lot. There's still work to be done. But now everything in the docs, everything in the code base is in the API docs, and it is documented to a pretty good initial standard of coverage. So it's a big improvement from where we were in V12, and that was possible largely because of our move to ESM. And no, I don't want to join you in the TypeScript channel. You can stay right there and be tormented as you enjoy inflicting upon yourselves. I would not want to step between a masochist and their pain. All right. Let's see. V13. What else is on the top tier of the list? Okay, so the main Patreon voted feature that we added in V13 is a brand new system for measurement and token movement. Now, this is quite amazing work. That was the Patreon voted feature from last time. So we've got Barrow here. When we go to move Barrow, we automatically get a ruler that measures the distance to every place we might want to go. we see with this dashed line visualization when I cross over a wall that cannot be passed over, where it's no longer possible to reach a position. This system is built with the possible integration of pathfinding in mind. Now, the system has to enable that, but there is the possibility for this to have pathfinding backends if you wanted it to. You can also do segmented movement. So I'm holding the control key and I'm moving a complex route around the arena. And we see that we get the distance of each segment that's moved. You notice that the token is auto-rotating to face the direction of their travel. Now, this is a nice feature if you're using top-down tokens, but if it's something that you don't like, you can disable that in settings. You don't have to keep the auto-rotation enabled, but for those of us who are playing with top-down tokens, it's really a nice quality of life thing to have. It also works with keyboard movement, so as I keyboard move around, I'm not just like walking backwards. When I move up, I turn to face the direction that I'm moving in, which is very nice. Again, I know some people are violently against this feature, so I will point out where to go to turn it off. You go into your settings and you scroll down until you find automatic token rotation and you uncheck it. Now, of course, bear in mind if you have lock token rotation configured for tokens, then they're not going to visually rotate either way. So, yeah. All right. So the measurement is so powerful. Each segment of movement has its own movement type. I showed this very briefly before. So, for example, we can be crawling instead of walking, and we also can change our elevation as part of the move. So I could like crawl. I could crawl this distance, and then I could, go over here and increase my elevation, and then I could go over here and decrease my elevation, and I can kind of do a sort of complex multi-step move that also includes 3D measurement as part of it. Suppose I'm now flying, I can take off in flight, and I can go over here and fly 30 feet up in the air, and I can do that all in one move, and it will give me the correctly measured kind of three-dimensional distance measurement for the game system as part of that movement. So you notice as I return to ground level, the distance that I'm traveling is also incremented according to the elevation change that I am making. It's very smart. It works with it's built in a way that it's very easy to extend for game systems from an API perspective. All of the different movement modes that are appropriate for the game system can be configured, and it interfaces beautifully with the new difficult terrain region that we've added. So if I add a scene region, let's say I make this square here, I'll call it difficult terrain. I can then add a behavior to that region, which is going to be a modify movement cost behavior. And in that behavior, I can say like it's twice as costly to walk in this region, and it's 5 times as costly to swim, for whatever reason you want that. So now what happens when I have this region applied is as I am measuring my movement, I move 5, and now we see that each step through this region is costing me 10 feet. And so I see that like once I'm in the difficult terrain, my movement is costing me more. And if each individual single step, and these aren't diagonals, so this isn't like 5, 10, 5. These are non-diagonal steps. Each individual step inside the region is costing me 10, and then I move back out and they're costing me 5 again. So there you go. The interaction of the measurement system with the new the new terrain modification is really cool. The way they interact together. Excuse me. I should probably pause for a second and take some questions. I haven't done that for a minute. If anyone has questions, drop them in chat, and I will, be happy to answer whatever questions you have. One thing that I think is a little bit mentioning the automatic token rotation thing. One thing that I think is maybe a little bit flying beneath the radar is like, let me grab a ringed token, like maybe this like unicorn out of Tasha's. So obviously, like here, this is not ideal. Like we probably should have this token configured so that since it is out of the box a ring style token, ideally we would have this token configured where its artwork is locked. So maybe that is a little piece of feedback I can pass to the D&D content team, is like when we do this, that would be a good default to have applied. So, but what this lock on the actual ringed token does is it's only preventing the aesthetic rotation of the token. It's not preventing mechanical rotation of the token. And that is an important distinction, because some game systems might have facing rules, or you might have things like, imagine this creature, this unicorn, has a green sort of bullseye lantern that emits in like a 90-degree arc. That's awful. Let's make it a little bit better. Why is it so dark in the coloration technique here? Seems wrong. Bug number 4, guys. Bug number 4. It's a darkness source. It's not a darkness source. That's why. It's not a bug. Not a bug. This was incorrectly configured as a darkness source. That's user error on my part. Okay, so the unicorn has this green sort of spotlight lantern, but it only emits in a narrow range. So, there is still a role. There is still a role to be had for changing the direction of facing for a circular token, even if the artwork doesn't move. So that's a quick reminder for people that there is a difference between the token having an underlying mechanical direction of facing versus the artwork of the token always remaining upright. And that's the reason those are two different concepts. They're not just the same thing. So that's my little PSA, my little public service reminder that even for certain game systems or for certain mechanics where there is any meaning of the direction of facing, you can still have both things. Your circular token can still be facing a certain direction, even if its artwork is always presented in the correct orientation. Another new thing in V13 is if you do want to configure like all of the tokens in your world a little bit more easily, there's a new approach for that. In game settings, there's a new concept. We replaced the old concept of default token settings. We replaced this with something that is intentionally more clear and framed as prototype token overrides. Prototype token overrides allows you to explicitly override the behavior of certain token properties. So you can say, like, for my tokens in my world, I always want health bars displayed. Or for my tokens in my world, I always want artwork rotation locked because I only ever use circular tokens, not ever top-down tokens. Or I always want the dynamic token ring to be enabled. So prototype token overrides is a little bit more of an intentionally heavy-handed way for you to say, like, I want all the tokens in my game experience to adhere to some certain rules. All right, let's see if there's any questions I can take. Question from BR Hall. The default increment for vertical changes is 5 feet. Not exactly. The default increment for vertical changes is whatever you have configured the step, the 1 unit grid size in your scene to be. So it could be 1 meter, it could be something else. In this scene, in scene configuration, the grid configuration is such that 1 grid space is 5 feet. And so therefore the vertical elevation steps that you make using keyboard stepping are also 5-foot steps. But the incrementation of the vertical keyboard change is linked to whatever the configuration of your grid size is. Question from Soil Souls. Will the team add an easier way to add dynamic token rings and maybe different rings for different actors? Yeah, so the limitation of like everything in the scene uses the same ring is a tricky one to explain because it's a restriction that we put in place really for performance reasons. Now, it's one we could break, it's one we could relax, like it just... What you might not necessarily intuitively think is imagine you have a scene with 100 tokens in it. If each of those 100 tokens was using a different ring, the way that the rendering pipeline works is that would be materially worse for rendering performance than if all 100 tokens use the same ring. And so that's part of the reason why we have that restriction in place. But I do think there is a future world where we can allow for different rings to be used for different tokens. I think it's the kind of thing, though, that like if we allow it, people will do it and they'll shoot themselves in the foot maybe by like giving each token its own ring because it's cool and you can, and that seems like a cool thing to do, and then you wonder why your rendering performance is no longer very good. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like we intentionally limited it a little bit to keep the performance good. But it's probably not that massive a performance loss. You know, mileage may vary. So I could see this being something that we relax that restriction in the future. Question from Chaos OS. Did you measure or find any performance improvements for load times with the ESM move? No, but that's not because there aren't any. It's just we didn't really look. We didn't do it for performance reasons. This was kind of something that like we knew we wanted and needed to do it almost regardless of other considerations. Now, obviously, like if this were some technology that lent itself to really poor performance, we would not have done it. But I think the ESM load time is comparable, at least. Maybe it's better, maybe it's a little worse, but we didn't actually measure it. It wasn't a relevant factor in our decision making. Chaos also asks, do you think there will ever be room for packages to define full-on custom theme alternatives to dark or light? Yes, I do. In fact, that was kind of part of our original plan. It may be something that got lost a little bit along the wayside of all of the things we do or did, but it was originally intended that the theme choice here would be like, we'll ship dark and light, but there can be other options that modules add. I might have to actually go back and dig into like where did we leave that, and is it actually possible already, and if so we need to document how, and is it not actually possible and we need to maybe, before we close the book on V13 entirely, re-ask ourselves, should that be possible? Because it was intended, yeah, it is intended that dark and light are like themes that we ship core stock, but that modules or systems should be able to define their own UI theme also. No promises, but I'll follow up on that. I don't recall exactly where we left it. TVM asks, question, I love the UI in V13. I was wondering if there's any plan to implement a tweening system for movement and or other animations in the future. Interestingly enough, this is already the case under the hood. So programmatically, from an API perspective, when you're configuring a movement, you can configure certain aspects of its animation properties, including, for example, the easing function that it's used to, get the token from A to B. We've played around with nonlinear easings for token movement, and sometimes they look good, and sometimes I think that the mechanical implications are confusing, because if we want, for example, the visualized movement speed of a token to slow down when you, for example, hit like a difficult terrain region, then in order for the visualized movement speed of a token in the VTT to have interpretable meaning, you kind of want movement speed to be linear at a base level so that you can perceptually detect a change in speed as belonging to a change in the difficulty of movement rather than proximity to completion. So nonlinear easing of the movement path would it's possible, but it would also kind of fight a little bit against other things that might make movement faster or slower. So for example, in the Crucible system, I integrate with this a little bit more heavily, where like actually your like creature speed informs your animation speed. So like if you were to, race two creatures side by side against each other, and one of the creatures is faster than the other, then that token will move faster than the other. So if you want visual animation speed to have some bearing on mechanics, then I think linear easing is probably the best choice. But if you don't want that, and if you're just interested in kind of look and feel of what it looks and feels like to, pick up a piece and put it down somewhere else, yeah, you could have a more exciting animation, nonlinear animation function that gets applied. Let's see. Question from Forian. Hello. If you have all those fancy region effects done in Ember already, what's the blocker preventing you from just copying them over to Core? Well, I suspect there's probably a little bit of tongue-in-cheek with this question, but I'll give you a serious answer. A few things. Firstly, we only bother developing the effects in Ember that we need for Ember. So if we make it a core thing, we need to be a little bit more principled about like what's the actual set of animations that makes sense to have. Because if we just shipped the Ember effects, it would be like, it would seem very random. It's like, why is there this combination of effects and not something obvious like X? I don't know what X is, but I think that would be one thing. I think another thing would be we don't actually use scene regions for them in Ember. Our visual effects at the moment in Ember are defined programmatically, so they're like in code configuration where we define a polygon path and we convert that polygon path to a geometry for the vertex shader, and we create a shader using that geometry, and we render something. So like, yes, we are producing some of the same results, but we're not doing it with like a UI configurable scene region behavior. And I think the difference between like the absolutely not user-friendly way that we're doing it versus what would be the necessarily user-friendly way that we would expose this feature to end users in V13 is a mountain of work. And then I think thirdly, I think for the most part, a lot of our effects in Ember are specialty sprite shaders because we've been able to break up our maps into multiple sprite layers. So for example, when we have something like this, like Moon Temple map, this is not just like a single background image. I mean, pretty obviously, if you think about the technology of it, it's not a single background image, but maybe you might not know what to look for or not know why or how that is. But there's lots of different layers, there's lots of different sprites, there's lots of different pieces of this map. And because when we created the map, we carved it up into all of these different pieces, we were able to, add animations or add shader effects to just specific things, just specific pieces of the map. And that's not quite the case that it would be with scene region effects, where the more standard use case for scene region effects would be like someone who has a flat single map image but wants to like jazz it up a little bit. And that means the technology needs to be focused a little bit more on like working with what you have rather than having exactly the technical foundation you need for different sprites that are rendered with different shaders. So I think it's like TLDR is like in Ember, we're able to be more technical with the way that we draw certain things that allows us to produce effects in a different way than would be the way that we would do it for core. Hopefully that kind of makes a bit of sense. Yeah, too complex, too specific. We would need a more general solution for core. All right, let's see. Any other questions? Zell, has dev numbers cursed my name due to typed object field? No, I don't think so. He's probably cursed my name. I think that, we want the typed object field to work perfectly. We don't want there to be any special cases or limitations. There's just a lot of things you can do with it that make it a little bit of a special case. And yeah, it's a little tricky to handle some of the edge cases around it. I wish it was more... I wish there wasn't edge case logic. Like I wish there wasn't special case logic needed for that field, but it's a little tricky. But I think if anything, that's not a you problem. That's a me problem for the way that, the data model or the underlying data fields work or are like recursively initialized or resolved. Like there's design trade-offs that are in place that, make certain things easier or harder to do. Let's see. Modest Proposal asks, is there a plan in the near future to continue to develop mobile, large device mobile support, like tablets. Yeah. I think to some degree, like, as technology evolves, tablets and laptops, maybe in my mind, like maybe they're a little less different. And, you know, obviously touch is a key thing. Like, we need to make sure we have a little bit better touch UX, but like tablets can start to pack quite a lot of pixels into their display. And so like from a resolution perspective, you've got enough screen size to work with. From a performance perspective, the hardware is like pretty powerful, and it can be, you know, can be good enough to power a Foundry client. So yeah, it's sort of like slow and steady touch improvements. I think like we're not going on a big crusade to say like, all right, stop what we're doing and the next thing we do is Foundry's going to work great on iPad. It's kind of like everything that we do, let's just gradually, like, one foot in front of the other, make sure we're making changes that are either touch neutral or better for touch. So like, let's not implement anything that specifically worsens the touch experience, and kind of hopefully over time we keep converging on eventually Foundry on an iPad feels good. But it's not really a huge priority, to be honest. So back to some other V13 features I can highlight. We talked about drag, movement, and measurement. Lights and sounds. We did add new tools for darkness sources that are very cool. We have a whole new approach for doing darkness sources. Suppose someone casts like a 20-foot radius darkness spell. It now has some very powerful techniques to... like, I'll make it this sort of like purple darkness cloud. You can't see into it, so it's now vision blocking at the near edge, which is like a new feature. V12 doesn't work that way. It also kills light sources that it overlaps, so if I move it just a hint here, it kills off this brazier. Once you go into it, you get that sort of blinded effect. That happens in V12 as well, but what didn't happen is really like some of the interactivities between this darkness source and other lights. The main thing being, of course, that the leading edge of the darkness source is now causes vision and light collision. So that's a big technical change that is very powerful. The other thing is now you can have light sources that are high priority or higher priority, and priority is weighed against each other in terms of like, okay, suppose we have by default, a priority 0 darkness source beats a priority 0 light source. But you could have a priority 1 light source that beats a priority 0 darkness source. So if I make this light source priority 1, then it is eating away at the darkness source. And if it fully overlaps the origin of the darkness source, it kills it off completely. So you can have sort of powerful magical lights that counteract magical darkness depending on their relative priorities. Now, a priority 1 darkness source would beat a priority 1 light source. And so you can kind of keep upping the ante on each other to say, like, how powerful is my darkness versus how powerful is your light. And that can show up, that can be very important often for certain spell mechanics or different things. Another thing that is really cool, we've got a new sound adaptive light source animation. It's not for darkness sources, but it is for light sources. You can have a sound reactive pulse that will pulse alongside whatever music is playing. So if I switch to some like combat music, perhaps, like we'll do Raider Fight Intense. Oh, you know what? I bet. I think the sound adaptive pulse probably does not work with the Ember soundscape feature, because Ember soundscapes are dynamically composed in a very particular way, and I'm guessing that this needs a more conventional music track to work. So I'll put that on Ludovic's radar. Ludovic designed the sound reactive pulse effect. I'll put that on Ludovic's radar to see if we can make it work with Ember music. It'll require a little bit of extra effort to make that compatible, I think. So never mind. Cancel the demo. Bug number 4. Ember, more of an Ember thing though than a core bug. Oh, the animated doors, you've seen that a lot in the stream so far, but these animated doors, that's something that's added in V13 and something I'm very excited about. I think it's just so great being able to visually open and close doors. You can configure so much about them. When you configure the wall, you can configure its animation type. You configure the texture that it uses for its door texture. You configure which direction it opens, how far it opens, how fast it opens. So for example, this default is it's like a pretty fast opening door that goes to exactly 90 degrees, but I could just as easily make that door open like much further. Like I can make it open like further than 90 degrees. I can make it open very dramatically slowly. I can make it open in the other direction, make it swing in versus swing out. I could make it a double door. I could make it slide. So for example, it's very dramatically swinging now in the other direction. So you can configure exactly how you want your door opening to look. And there's so many options you can use. And also other animations, for example, like a slide. So we can have a sliding door. We can have a double door. We can have double sliding doors. We can have swiveling doors. Not really appropriate here, but it's like imagine like a secret passageway that sort of like swivels on its central axis. You can have a descending door that descends into the floor. You can have an ascending door that ascends up to the ceiling and goes above your token. So like when we walk underneath the door, the ascending door goes over top of the token like that. Or the descending door goes underneath the token's feet. It's a nice little flourish. So like we send the descending door down, and then when we walk over it, we're on top of the door texture. So lots of like nice little ways to configure and open doors. And of course we have the door sound effects as well. So you can like pick a sound effect for the door. You pick an animation type for the door. It's just a nice little flourish that makes your scenes feel really appealing to explore. Question from Surenstar about could we do a door falling over like it's broken? Not yet. We haven't done anything like that, but certainly like this is a powerful framework that has support. Like you could extend more door animations, and we could definitely make a door animation for like break. We could have some way to think about like, oh, we're gonna bash this door open, and then there's a different appearance for that. It would require some more work. It's not something we've done yet, but it is a good idea. Let's see. Question, does the macro bar really need to be visible all the time in V13? Well, we treat it, I mean, I suppose everyone has a different opinion about that question, but we treat it the same as other interface elements. So it fades the same amount that scene navigation does. It fades the same amount that scene controls does. If you like the idea of it, you can turn the inactive opacity of the UI down very low to say like 0.05. And if I do that, then all of my UI is almost completely invisible now. There's just a very faint shadow trace of it, and then I can hover over it and, you know, I can get my UI back from nothing. But like, if you remember where stuff is in the UI and you want it to be completely unobtrusive, you can make the UI completely unobtrusive except when you hover over it. But that setting does apply to all UI elements, not just the macro bar. So there isn't a setting where you would, for example, have like a totally transparent, like a totally unobtrusive macro bar, but the other UI elements are always visible. There's not that kind of separation. It's something a module could do. Soil Souls asks, can we have a channel selection for sound reactive lights, like only reacting to music or environment sounds? Currently, yeah, I think it's only music. In fact, it should probably, the name of the animation should probably be music reactive lights, because what it currently does is it reacts to audio on the music context channel. But yeah, good question. But just a caveat that is currently how it works. Is it's on the music channel, and it does react differently. I mean, I should probably switch over to a different world so I could show it. But yeah, it reacts differently to like highs or lows depending on what you configure as the intensity of the animation. Combat turn markers, that's a new thing. So there's core support for combat turn markers. I can, you know, suppose I have 2 creatures in combat here. I've got my Scalith, and then I've got Sephrus. We'll put them both in combat. So, shout out for the beautiful Rajan lunar dice. Love them. Also a cool demo of how when a combat starts in Ember, the sound, I didn't change the sound myself. It automatically switched to Undead Fight, and it chose that automatically because it detected that Undead is the predominant creature type that I'm fighting against here. So it automatically switched to Undead Fight because it's like smart in determining what soundscape to use. Cool little flourish. But yeah, for the combat encounter, I can configure it. I could enable turn markers, and I can pick something like a very ugly turn marker to use just by default. I'll set this like sci-fi dice thing. It's not that ugly. It's maybe not thematically appropriate for this setting, but you get the idea. You can choose any image as your turn marker. You can customize what your turn marker should be. And then when you switch turns in combat, it automatically pops over to the new person. You can configure which animation type it uses. So this is just spin, but it also has pulse instead of spin. And it has a spin and pulse, spin pulse, both of them at the same time. Whichever animation you feel like you like the best. It also can tint the texture according to the disposition of the target. So like it can be like a red, it can get like a red tint automatically if it's a hostile target, or a green tint automatically if it's a friendly target. So you can apply disposition tinting to whatever texture you choose, which is a little bit cool. And you can also override it for any one individual token. So like, I suppose I have these settings applied as the default turn marker configuration for all tokens in the combat. I can then, for an individual token, I can, under resources, I can configure it to be non-default. So like, I can have a actor like that never has a turn marker, or I could have an actor that uses a custom turn marker. So like, it'll use the orange foundry instead of this one, and then you can have like a token, a different turn marker for each of your party members or something, if you want each party member to have their own unique turn marker. Yeah, so there's a good bit of functionality here that you can set. I'll just change this back to default though. Yeah, so that's combat turn markers in a nutshell. We'll end the combat, and the music automatically changes back to, you know, whatever it was before, now that we're no longer in combat. Nice little ease of GM experience thing. It's just nice to be able to not have to worry about changing the music or remembering to change the music. Let's see, what's next? New build type. That's an interesting one to showcase. So I shouldn't show this on stream because that will leak all of my license keys. But if you go to your user profile on the Foundry website, and you go to where you download the software, there's a new download type that you can get. There's actually 2 new download types. One new download type is Windows Portable, which is an alternative to the Windows installed app. So instead of it being like an installed application that Windows only allows you to have one installed Foundry VTT app at a time, you can have Windows Portable build, which is basically just like an extracted zip that you can have as many of those side by side as you want. And it just goes, you put it wherever you want, and your user data goes right along with it. So wherever you put the Windows Portable is where your data will be. It's where the app will be. It's a great way to test different versions of the software in a kind of easy modular way. We also have a new build type for Node.js. Now, you could always run Foundry for Node.js. You just had to download the Linux artifact previously. But that Linux artifact was kind of overburdened with unnecessary cross-platform dependencies and overburdened with unnecessary Electron build stuff. So the new Node artifact has none of that. It doesn't have any of the Electron app in it, but it does have cross-platform dependencies. So you can use that Node installer to run a Node.js server on a very wide range of hardware and operating systems. But it's more lightweight. It's like half the size of the Electron build. So it's more lightweight and faster, easier to deploy. So those are some key changes in the builds. We talked about the UI. We talked about prototype token overrides. Gosh, there's so much. We talked about measurement. Some of these things. Oh, new document types is something that's interesting to highlight. So suppose we have multiple Scalith in combat. It's programmatic for now. It's not exposed in the UI, but you can create combatant groups, which can put all of these into a group. Now, the D&D system already does this by already grouping multiple creatures of the same type that are, I believe the D&D rules is like if they are at the same initiative value. So the D&D system already was doing something like this, which was added in a fairly recent update. So for the D&D system, creatures at the same initiative share the same group like this. But this is now a more core approach to that you can define combatant groups in core in the combat tracker that they don't necessarily have to have their combatants at the same initiative level. So that's a new thing that we have that is pretty cool. But yeah, when it is the group's turn, I guess something we probably need to do with the groups, although this is maybe a D&D system thing, is like when it is the group's turn, it should be the whole group's turn. But it does still put sort of an internal order inside that, which is fine. It's an implementation choice, probably the right one for D&D. But it could also be that the whole group acts the same way. Oh, another thing with movement is when you're in combat and you like take your turn and you move, we also now track the movement history. So it's not, this measurement of movement is not just like ephemeral. I can mouse over any of these combatants and I can see like what movement they did on their turn. So suppose I like, you know, I'm going to use my dash action and I'm going to run all the way around the room, provoking all sorts of opportunity attacks, supposing it was my turn, of course. Let's do that again now that it is actually my turn, because my movement history would reset when it becomes my turn. I make that movement and then it tracks how much I did. And if I move more, like suppose I'm a monk and I spend a bonus action on even more movement, it adds on to the movement that I've already done. So it tracks the cumulative history of your movement throughout your turn. And then when your turn elapses and it comes back to your turn the next round, that history is cleared and you get kind of a clean slate for the next round. So that's a nice other thing that the movement measurement and movement history does that I didn't show yet. We also have new journal categories, something that's very exciting. So in the journal entries, now this is the Ember stylized journal, but what you see here on the left, like overview, events, or here in the gazetteer with like biomes, locations, appendix, these are categories of the journal. So you can now configure TOC, table of contents categories for each journal entry, and then you can put pages under those categories. So you get more organizational control over your journal content. And Ember is stylizing it in a particular way, but this is now a core V13 feature. So it's not just an Ember thing. Any V13 using the new journal sheet V2. So that is the requirement, is it has to be a V2 journal sheet. V2 journal sheets can add categories, which is awesome. Let me take a couple questions. I think I'm probably starting to run out of steam. We're now at about the 3-hour mark. I think I'm going to wrap up here soon. So I'll show a few more features. I'll take a few more questions. I'll show off a few more things, and then I will wrap up. I know this isn't an Ember stream, and I shouldn't just brag on Ember too much. I just freaking love how like every little skeleton is like slightly different, and you get all this like great variety in your monsters that you're fighting against. I am so partial to that, like having every little adversary be slightly visually distinct. I love it. I also love, we have a new construct maker for little Arcturian robots. Part of the lore in Ember is like Arcturians in particular are quite industrious with like making little crafted constructs for their like, you know, farms or their sort of like at-home use. And so you get some pretty ridiculous, there's so many different like types of parts in here, so you get some pretty ridiculous options when you're making your little construct buddies. But I just love like all the little weird little constructs that you can like spit out of this thing. It's like so entertaining to me, like the different the different little constructs that you get. They're funny. Devin's making more construct parts as we speak. All right. What else do we have? I was going to take some questions. Let's see. Questions. My voice is going, which is a good sign that I should wrap up soon. Question from A10X. What's the thing you like most or feel best about with the V13 update? I think that I can uncontroversially say the fact that we converted every single app remaining to app v2 is such a point of pride and a point of relief for me. I was really worried we might have lingering tech debt that like we would be dragging into V14 with some like leftover V1 apps. And I'm really glad that the team made the decision to take an extra 2 weeks and like make sure we really rallied as a team. And honestly, like all of us, we put in hours to make sure that we hit all of the remaining apps. And so the fact that we have no more app v1s in core is probably the thing I'm proudest about. Yeah, let's see. What energy drink have you claimed as your go-to, and why is that now my favorite? I have a boring answer. It's coffee for me. I drink coffee in the morning, and I feel like a shell of a human being without it. I don't drink energy drinks, though. I don't have anything like morally opposed to them. I just don't. I don't drink like Red Bull or Monster or anything like that. I just drink coffee. Let's see. Question from Surin Star. What was the most unexpected problem the team encountered with the V13 upgrade? That's a great question. We were working on V13 a long time, and so I think there were a couple of real like rocky moments that we had to sort of figure out how to solve. But I think there is one answer that rises above all of the others, which was a fork in the road that we encountered early on, but not so early on that it wasn't unexpected turbulence. If I go to the like the Patreon poll for let's see, article V13 Patreon poll. I bet if I look back in the past and I say like, oh, what is it that we said we were gonna do in V13? Well, the headline feature of V13 was supposed to be Pixie V8 and web GPU support. And well, TLDR, that didn't happen. We had to take a big pivot, and we had to take a big step back from that plan. And ultimately, I'm proud of the team for the way that we approached that, because that was a really difficult decision. There was major pros and cons on both sides, and we had to make a big call there. And Pixie V8 looks great. It really looks great. But like we would have just, pardon my language, but we would have like really fucked over a lot of people if we had gone to Pixie V8. And like we could have made it work ourselves, but I think it would have been a little bit of a community disaster. And there's really like nothing we could have done to like not have that happen. So yeah, we had to like we had to really have a lot of difficult internal discussions about what to do, because and we do still look longingly at Pixie V8 from afar. We see it over there on the horizon, and we see all of its nice features, and we're like, I wish I had that. So, you know, we do still face some tricky decisions about like how do we capture that. I don't think it's going to be in V14 though. I don't think we're going to even attempt it. I think like we have no clear line of sight to how we can move past Pixie V7 at the moment. I think I've got some ideas for like post V14 that I'm not going to talk about right now because they're too far away and they're too, you know, they're too undefined. They're not you know, clarified enough yet. But I think like there are things we can do in the long run where we can maybe shift the way that we do canvas rendering. But by that point, it'll probably be Pixie V10 or something, and it'll end up being a big jump, not just V7 to V8, but it'll probably be V7 where we stay for several years, all the way up to V10, and when the time comes, it'll be a big step. But we'll tackle that, you know, when that time comes. But it won't be V14. I'm quite sure. Anyways, that's a great question. I think that's something that like I have regret about where that ended up, because like I said, I look at Pixie V8 and I'm like, the things they can do with graphics, so good, or the, you know, this new syntax for doing XYZ looks great. But we don't have any clear migration path, and the Pixie team, wonderful, some paid, some volunteer team, you know, they have a great community just like we do, but ultimately they do not seem very interested in providing a migration path for V7 to V8. They view it as, you know, it's not the typical way that people use Pixie. People usually use Pixie for their own project, and the developer makes a choice, like I'm going to use V7 or I'm going to use V8, and if I decide to move from V7 to V8, well, I can do the work myself to make the changes I need to make. But that's not the way Foundry is. Like, Pixie is an architectural foundation, not just for us, but for all of you developers out there, and like we can't make your changes for you. And so like that's just something that it's a totally different paradigm, and our problem space doesn't fit into their prioritization box. Let's see. Question from Lazytron XL. What does App V3 look like? Maybe a tongue-in-cheek question, maybe not, but I hope there won't ever be one. I feel very good about App V2. I think there's things about App V2 that could be better, but I think that the ways that App V2 could be better are ways that like we probably can incrementally make App V2 better rather than reaching a point where we need to make a V3. Question from Sergerak, is Ember on schedule? Great question. Difficult question. Probably a better one for next weekend, but I'll give a teaser answer now. I think in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. It's a massive project, and given the size of the project, there are absolutely some places where we are behind. We are caught unprepared for the consequences of the scope that we've committed to. But there's also places where we're absolutely on track and we are even ahead of schedule. And like on net, what does that mean? I'm not sure. But I do think that the timelines that we set out in Kickstarter in terms of like when we expect to go to an Alpha 2, when we expect to go to a Beta 1, when we expect to go to a Beta 2, when we expect to go to an early access, I think we're still on track for those dates. What exactly Alpha 2 is maybe has shifted a little bit, but we didn't promise exactly what Alpha 2 is. We just promised there will be an Alpha 2. So there's some flexibility, and our plans are flexing a little bit with them. Some things are behind, some things are ahead. It's a huge project. And so like the amount of uncertainty in completing it is big, but I'm so proud of what we've added even since Alpha 1. Like we're going to have 0.2.1 coming out soon, and then 0.3.0 next month, and each one of those updates is adding like a major chunk of new content. So yeah, we are doing it, and we are making really good progress, and we're getting faster at doing some things too. Like there's definitely parts of Ember production that took us 2 months to do a year ago now takes us 1 month to do. And I think that's something that like we're getting better because we're learning, we're getting faster, and we're building new like internal tools for the types of things that we have to commonly spend time doing. Well, we're like building tools to automate away the tasks that are slowing us down. So yeah, I don't know, I'm feeling good about it, although there's still a long way to go. Question from 13 Obi Mac. Any plans for LLM integrations, in-game chat, NPC dialogue? No, not planned. I think there's space for modules if they want to add LLM integration, but there's technical challenges. There's also philosophical challenges. I think the AI space at the moment is in a place that I'm personally not supportive of, and so that probably puts an upper bound on how much I want Foundry VTT to, enable or empower it. I think Foundry remains an open platform for development, and I don't have any major qualms about community developers bringing AI integrations into Foundry if they do it on their own time, but it's not something I want to spend our own developer resources on. I feel pretty badly about what's happening. It's cool tech, though. I mean, it is really cool tech. I can't, my feelings on it are nuanced. But yeah, I mean, I just like make the mistake of thumbing through social media for a moment, and it's like every second post is like some new AI model innovation that is just getting better and better at stealing techniques and work from other creatives. It just feels really bad to see that happening and see like, I mean, we're doing cool stuff. Like I feel like something like Ember, at least for the time being, there's not going to be a next gen model that you ask it to like build me a masterfully crafted VTT integrated original fantasy world with music and maps and tokens and balanced combat and gameplay and compelling character narratives. And it's going to be a long time until like that just gets like spit out of a machine. But there's no doubt that products like Ember are and have been harvested as training data for those models, and like our team's hard work, whether we like it or not, is actively going into the disenfranchisement of creatives like our team. So like it feels shitty, and so it's not really something that I feel like supporting. Question from Chaos about what's the current feeling about Canvas cards since they didn't make it into the V14 poll. Well, there's this cool new project that's dropping soon that you may have heard of or you may not have. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. I don't remember what's been announced yet or what hasn't been announced yet, so I'll maybe err on the side of not saying anything. But there's a team out there in the community that's put a lot of work into improving the experience of card-based gameplay in Foundry, and we didn't want to come in hot on the heels of that work with like the proposal for us to do it differently or better or something like that. So I think we kind of tactically pumped the brakes on that poll option because of community investment put into solving it a different way that we didn't want to like undercut or invalidate. If what I'm talking about has already been announced, someone feel free to link to it. I don't know if it's been announced yet, so I'll wait until that happens otherwise. Complete card management is already public and in use with Suede. Okay, I'm talking about the complete card management module or library. I don't know whether you prefer calling it one thing or the other, but like it just dropped and it looks very cool. It looks very powerful. I think like there's obviously been like investment made into creating that, and I think we didn't want to just like come in the next day and be like, oh, yo, we'll do that now. That might have not felt too good. I don't know, or maybe it would have. Maybe no one would have cared. But yeah, we decided to like pump the brakes on Canvas cards for at least V14. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna take a couple more questions. I'm really losing steam here, but it's been a great stream. You guys have been awesome audience, very interested, great questions, some really good ones. Saint Baylor asks, have we fully abandoned the idea of player client? No, it is not fully abandoned. But I think Saint Baylor, my thinking on it has evolved that it's no longer something that really makes sense for us to ask people to vote for. I don't think it's going to happen in V14, but it's a long shot that it might. Player client is part of an interconnected conflux of things that we at some point need to do. At some point in the future, and I don't want to like spark any alarm bells by like making people think things are going to change, but at some point in the future, it is likely going to be necessary that everybody's Foundry VTT instance is running using SSL certificates. Many people would say, oh, that should already be the case, you jackass. Like, why don't you value security? Well, there's a lot of reasons we don't want to be generating SSL certificates like for people who aren't us. So like we can give people a framework to generate their own certs, but we're not generating them for you. Or we're not, you know, acting as a certificate authority in that way. But anyways, technical mumbo jumbo aside, I think it's possible in the future that it will be necessary for Foundry servers to be using SSL. I think there's more and more web technologies that we want to lean into, that we want to use, that require it. Like if we want to seriously make AV better, if we want to seriously make the canvas better, if we want to lean into web GPU, if we want to do more things with peripheral integration and web Bluetooth, like these are all things that require secure context. Even more like audio tools and things are leaning towards secure context required. So like at some point it's going to be necessary for SSL certs to be in play, and that may to varying degrees require Foundry server hosts to have a, you know, like Foundry to be generating self-signed certificates for people, or maybe there's other approaches we might consider. But it's possible that those, you know, certificates that Foundry's using may not be ones that a standard web browser would view as trustworthy. And so like a player client, among other things, could broker a secure connection with a Foundry server using self-signed certificates without, you know, scaring the client into being like, they're stealing your apes or something. Or there's other things we could do, you know, if it's Electron to Electron, we could kind of do some other things that might work around this issue. It's kind of an unsolved space, but it's one that we're thinking about. And while I don't love the idea of players needing to install something, because like the ease of just being able to just pop a URL into your web browser and play, like that's so unbeatable in terms of like there's no barrier to entry for the player. There's certain things that might push us into a corner where player client at some point is necessary. I don't know. It probably won't be 14, but maybe down the road. It's not something that is like gone from our collective consciousness though. All right, I think that's probably a good, yeah, next level. Exactly. I think it's a great user story that you're providing. Like, I just messed with SSL for the first time, an in-person game, in order to use the Pixels dice. All the warnings are very scary, even on the same network. Yeah, it's not great. I mean, ideally you have there's ways to make this better, but there's not easy ways to make this better. And so I think, it's a hard problem to solve for us in the long term. All right. Last question. Anyone want to claim the right of closing arguments? Nihilori asks, for V14 scene levels, are you going to be working with Ripper? I think we'll probably have a consultation of sorts, and we'll certainly do some fact finding to understand what features would be necessary in order to provide some comparable level of coverage. But as I mentioned earlier in the stream, the goal isn't to say our core feature needs to do everything the module does, nor is it to say we can't do something that the module doesn't do. I think they are kind of non-overlapping sets of functionality that we're going to create, and we admire the very ingenious and effective work that Ripper does, but Ripper can't solve this problem by adding a new document type, or by adding server-side handling, or by changing private methods of the core software code. So, Ripper does the best implementation that can be done subject to the restrictions that are faced, but that doesn't mean it's the way that we would do it. And so, that isn't the way that we think about approaching new features. Is we don't look at we look at what modules are doing, but we don't look at how modules are doing it, because how modules are doing it is kind of inherently more limited than how we would do it. Am I getting enough? Quick question. How happy am I? Lightning round. How happy am I with last 5-6 years of Foundry VTT's life? I'm overjoyed, Forian. It's wonderful. Did your skincare routine change? No, still the same. Thank you. Are you getting enough rest? Enough. I think probably, maybe slightly under, but pretty good. The kids are getting a little older, and as the kids get a little older, then enough starts being a little bit more enough. What is your favorite NPC? Oh my gosh. That is a very challenging question. I can't answer it. I'll have to think about it. You can ask me again in the Ember stream. Do you think there's any point going to be some official tutorials about creating a system in Foundry? Hopefully. Yes, hopefully. That's a shortcoming that we have. There should be. Among other shortcomings we have where something should be, but yes, there should be, and so I do hope that there will be someday. What is the airspeed of an unladen swallow? Classic question. Classic. I'm not gonna try and clarify the type of swallow though. I'm just gonna say it is 4 knots. It's definitely 4 knots. Can I interest you in an extended car warranty? You may not. Favorite poll winner from the last 5 polls? Wow. I don't even remember what the winners were. What were the winners? V13 was the movement and measurement. V12... What won? What was the winner? I don't... Oh, that's what we rolled into scene regions, event triggers and terrain. Yeah. What was before that? I don't remember. I don't know. I don't know what was my favorite winner. They've been all worthy, but my memory, I've cleared recent memory of them. I think all worthy winners. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much for the company this afternoon. I'm going to go give my voice a rest. I'm going to recover. Please join Vivian, Shark, the rest of the Pathfinder development team tomorrow for PaizoCon, the panel, which is at 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. Please join Keora on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, for an amazing world building and artwork stream about Ember. Stay tuned on Monday of next week for an insightful article where you can read all about what we're up to and what we're looking ahead towards. Thank you all very much for spending time with me. I hope that I will see you next Tuesday for our Tomb of Annihilation stream, or Free Project Friday on Friday, or the Ember stream next Saturday. There's plenty of great events still coming up, so I hope to see you all back here for those. And until then, farewell, cheers, happy gaming, and I will see you next time.